to the first ever Cosmos Stablecoin Summit. Today, we have some incredible speakers, incredible builders, all coming together to talk about the future of Cosmos, the role that stablecoins will play in it, the infrastructure behind it. So the first bit we'll be pulling up some of the core teams, doing 4-minute intros of all the different protocols. We'll then be doing a brief keynote speaker, about a 15-minute session where we talk about the importance of stablecoins. We'll then be having some of our thought leader panel with Zucky, which is going to be wonderful. We'll then be doing deeper dives into each one of the stablecoin projects out there. What differentiates them? How are they thinking about risk? How are they modeling risk? What are the economic components behind all these different Cosmos stablecoin projects? And then we'll also be having an infrastructure panel, and then we'll finally close off the summit. So this is going to be a couple hours of super dynamic content. Really appreciate everyone who rolls up to this. It'll be huge if you guys can go on Twitter, go to shade_protocol, retweet the link, spread the YouTube link. Let's get everyone in Cosmos in here, gathering around decentralized finance and what the future is for the Cosmos. So that being said, I am now going to be pulling up teams one at a time, where they have 4 minutes to talk about their stablecoin project, what it's about. And without further ado, we're going to be pulling up Dean from Agoric for his 4-minute introduction.
Am I live here?
You are live, Dean. The floor is yours. 4 minutes is not a lot of time. So
no, it's not. No, it's not. And I never overrun my time box. Okay. Interprotocol is IST for Interstable Token. This is a stable token that was designed at Agoric, quite some time ago, before even, the UST collapse, where the fundamental thing we understand and people learned thousands of years ago is that having a stable token really enables commerce and an economy to thrive. Right? That you can do the barter economy of ETH, where you're trading one token for another, and it's like everyone has to do foreign exchange in order to buy bread, right? And so we knew that's a fundamental part of an economy. We're rolling out a pluggable, economy where the millions of developers out there that program JavaScript, right? 15, 17 million developers can build smart contracts in JavaScript using the reusable, pluggable model that developers are familiar with from systems like React and Vue. But we know that economy requires a stable token in order to be able to, price multiple providers of similar services together, or do, in particular, long-term contracts, right? If you're going to do mortgages or loans with payback schedules, you want to be able to know that what you pay back in a year is the same as what you're paying back now. Okay, so fundamentals. So we designed this IST and then realized that since Agoric was interchain first, that this stable token was perfectly suited for the interchain, for the Cosmos interchain and the extended interchain beyond that. So fundamentals of it: it is over collateralized, not under collateralized, not purely algorithmic or not algorithmic. It maintains parity with US dollar. Right now, Agoric, the platform, doesn't need that. You don't need that for a stable token, right? You just need low volatility, so the price this month is close to the price next month of the same thing. But it's useful from an accounting point of view, based on feedback and talking to people of what they want out of a stable token, that it has parity to a dollar. It is IBC native, so designed for interchain utility, where you can, pay for something or, resolve a option down to pay off an IST, take it over to another chain, buy an NFT, go off and loan against that, whatever you're doing, right? So multiple uses. It is extensible, right? It's built in that same component model, the same offer safety and robust composition that we designed Agoric for. And so it solves one of the main problems that you have in a stable token, which is you need the ability to extend it over time safely. So the component model of Agoric enables independent components like minting against USDC, where it's accumulating reserve, minting against a vault where I've got collateral that I lock up and I mint tokens against it. Delta neutral, all the mechanisms that might extend or might be robust solvent mechanisms for minting IST, it can easily combine those and extend those in a safe way, right? We can take the liquidator for vaults, right? A key thing for MakerDAO style vaults is the liquidation infrastructure. We can evolve that over time by adding new components, new contracts, plugging them together, having a contract that will liquidate over multiple sources depending on which one's most efficient, be able to liquidate across the interchain to the likes of Osmosis and Crescent or whatever's on Juno, etc. Right? So being able to have pluggable components that can go together safely and a governance infrastructure around that enables this continued evolution that is what you need in order to produce sort of an ideal stablecoin that incorporates all these different economic mechanisms to enable all the uses we expect to put stablecoins to. And how am I doing on time?
That's perfect. I think that was 4 minutes on the dot. It's really the beautiful part about Agoric is it has this vision for a smart contract platform that's incredibly inclusive of the largest coding language in the world, and when we can pull these developers into this new ecosystem, there has to be a stable coin at the heart of it, and that's what you guys have built. And it's the beauty of it is it's more than just Agoric stable coin. It can be a stable coin for the Cosmos as well. So super pumped about IST. We'll be doing a deep dive on this later on. We also have the stablecoin panel. So thank you, Dean, for your 4-minute intro. We will now be pulling up Comdex. Sid, welcome.
Hey, Carter, how's it going? I hope you can hear me.
We can hear you perfectly fine. This is once again the 4-minute challenge of how in the world do you compartmentalize the story of a stablecoin in 4 minutes. The floor is yours, Sid.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, firstly. So yeah, I know for us, most of us who are aware of Comdex, we started our journey building out solutions for the commodity supply chain industry. It's one of the largest industries out there. And in our journey of kind of building out those solutions for that industry, we recognize that one of the key aspects or one of the key pieces of the entire supply chain that needs to be solved is payments itself. And that's kind of where the seed for our kind of journey for building a stablecoin was kind of planted, because we realized that having that payment settled on chain was far more. It would be far faster than existing kind of existing CeFi rails of moving money around the world. And that's how we kind of originally approached the idea of building a stablecoin. Of course, we always wanted to be, more decentralized in our approach, more futuristic in our approach, and always believed that having a decentralized stablecoin would be the right way going forward. And that's kind of where our journey began. Of course, we originally thought of it as USCX, which is what we named it, way back in 2021 when we announced that we're starting working on it. But since then, we kind of recognized that a decentralized stablecoin can find its peg or can find its utility from being pegged to a floating reference. It doesn't necessarily have to be the US dollar. So we renamed it to Composite, which is now CMST. Currently, it is pegged to the dollar because that's still, a kind of unit of account that's most relatable to most users that we, wish to attract to our platforms. So it's pegged to the US dollar, following a very similar mechanism to, MakerDAO's mechanism for DAI. So it's an over-collateralized stablecoin backed by a variety of interchain assets. And for the most part, the way the mechanism works is to ensure healthy collateralization on the protocol at all times, and keeping track of kind of how the liquidity for those collateral assets are in the market at any given time. And then, of course, in events of volatility, there's liquidations that happen on the platform as well, which follow an auction mechanism, which we can get into later on. But speaking of our approach, which we've kind of done a little differently, of course, we continue to build a lot of things on the CeFi side of things, but we recognize that strong decentralized stablecoin must have utility in the decentralized space in the form of decentralized finance. And DeFi is powered by stablecoins, and stablecoins kind of are central to making a DeFi economy work. So in that regard, on the Comdex chain itself, we've also built out our own DEX in the form of CSwap, and we have a lending borrowing market launching very soon called Komodo. Of course, in the future, we'll be building more and more utilities around the stablecoin that create a more kind of vibrant DeFi economy. But at the heart of it is Composite, a stablecoin which is built on a fundamentally robust model for the kind of past stablecoin models that we've been exposed to. And then, of course, when it comes to our long-term vision, we do see that in the future, there will be more intersections of CeFi and DeFi, more intersections of institutional users coming into the DeFi side of things and using DeFi protocols and so on. And again, there we believe, having payment settlements engines or financing engines or on-chain financing of real-world assets with something like Composite would be kind of an ideal approach for us to set up that infrastructure before the institutions are ready to get in. So that at a high level is everything that we're doing at Comdex and our approach so far. And really excited for the rest of the event today.
100%. What I love about Comdex is it really started with this vision tied to commodities and the integration of centralized finance into DeFi rails. And within that journey, Comdex, realizing, hey, we need a stable coin at the center of all of this to pull this vision together. We need a center point that unites the liquidity within this compartmentalized, DeFi ecosystem. So I think it's a super unique background. Super pumped to dig in more on the deep dive and as well as the stablecoin panel. Thank you so much, Comdex Sid, for doing your intro. And next up, I believe we have USK and Kujira. Hello, Dove. Welcome.
Thank you, Carter. How are you doing?
Doing lovely. Once again, the 4-minute challenge to differentiate and tell the story. The floor is yours.
Awesome. Here we go. All right, cool, man. So yeah, Kujira basically is an ecosystem that is now focusing on finance, of course, DeFi, but we really are focusing on fintech. As you guys probably know, we had a lot of experience with liquidations on the Terra end, and that was for almost a year. So we felt like after doing that for close to a year and having the experience that we had with specifically on-chain liquidations, we realized that if we are going to want to build an ecosystem that is truly fair and kind of easy for people to use, but more importantly, as I say, fair for people to use, and they're able to enter easily, and whether it's bidding on liquidations, somewhat ironically, kind of going back into that circular loop, or simply trading on the DEX, we realized that the stablecoin is probably the most capital efficient route that we could go initially. And of course, every ecosystem really does need a stablecoin. So one of the big aspects that we were looking at is simply decentralized exchanges needing a stable quote asset. I think that's very important if you consider people coming into an ecosystem, people that are not necessarily really experienced traders. That's kind of one small aspect, but I think it's a big one. People really do need this single quote asset, I think, if they're going to be in an ecosystem like Kujira that is growing. We also have a bunch of protocols that are joining. One which I'd like to mention because it's relevant to this discussion is called Local Money. So if you consider this is a peer-to-peer marketplace, so if you've got people particularly in emerging economies, and this is something we really are focusing on, if you've got people in emerging economies where their currencies can be very flaky and there's often a lot of corruption and mega high fees, this is something that we really are trying to tackle. So having this dollar-based currency that could change down the line, but of course, dollar is the one most people are accustomed to. This is something that's really important for us. So this message that we keep saying of everyone deserves to be a whale, or be the whale, what we mean by that is equality and fairness. So for us, having this stable coin is a very, very important aspect of that as we move further and further into the decentralized commerce space and specifically into payments in DeFi. So that's something that's going to be a really, really large part of Kujira going forward. Of course, there's the broader ecosystem, which bolsters all of that, and it makes all of that possible. And it gives you various, whether it's lending markets or a whole range of apps, those are the things that bolster this ecosystem. And then, of course, as per Agoric that was saying, of course, it's RBC enabled, interchain, all those lovely things that the Cosmos brings us. So yeah, for us, I know MakerDAO are coming on. It's very much the same model if you want to talk about model over collateralized. So we really feel like, given all the stuff that's gone on in the space, this is an important aspect. We are looking and already have started providing a range of collateral options. We're looking outside the Cosmos too, because we believe that this really should be diversified. So we've already got Ethereum, the guys at Axelar, who everyone in Cosmos knows, bringing over Ethereum in a really safe way, as well as guys like Nomic Bitcoin. So yeah, for us, it's really about, instead of going from the top down with payments, we're trying to go from the bottom up and service people that really, really need payments to work for them. They need lower fees, and they need systems that they can literally work with just their mobile phone, which is what we're going to be working towards. And this really is the basis of the stablecoin. Yes, it'll be Cosmos wide. It'll be all those great things, but we really are focusing on this bottom up sort of helping of people that really, really need the infrastructure and probably don't have it. So this is really the grounding for the stablecoin.
Amazing. I think what I love about, two things that really stand out to me. The first one is the desire to get the stablecoin into the real world and solving real commerce problems. What is the purpose of Web3 if it can't actually impact our everyday lives? And so that message of fairness and inclusion, like that's 100% what stablecoin need in order to thrive. And then I think the second part that stands out to me is the story of Kujira is that you were there for the collapse of an entire ecosystem. You've seen the massive problems, but you've also been able to glimpse into the future and see what could be. And so I think that's the continued story of Kujira as one of resilience, one of fairness and inclusion. So thank you for your summary. Can't wait to do even more deep dives with you, Dove. And now we'll be having Dai from MakerDAO coming up next.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Thanks for having me. Great. I'll try to keep it brief, 4 minutes. I think it should be enough. My name is Tadeo. I'm the facilitator for the Data Insights Core Unit at MakerDAO. MakerDAO has been a project based on Ethereum. Our main product is the DAI stablecoin. It started as SAI, which is only collateralized by ETH. Now it's collateralized by other crypto assets and is mostly being so. As of late, not only are we over-collateralized with volatile crypto assets, but also with other stable coins, as well as willed assets. So we also get in there. We started, DAI actually just turned 5 years old not that long ago. So we're very happy with that and celebrating that. Yeah. And I think in kind of looking at the Lindy test, it's been around for a while. We've suffered quite a few, gone through quite a few crises, particularly Black Thursday in March 2020, where the entire system, while based on the assumption that liquidations do work, did fail, but we're able to build a more stronger system that is able to handle liquidations. Our goal is really to have DAI become a global currency and alternative system to fiat currencies, and really give that ability to people in everyday life to opt for an alternative, essentially. We're happy to be invited here. We are based on Ethereum, and we're focusing now on Ethereum-based rollups. We later on move on to EVM-compatible chains. But again, I think we do believe that the future is multi-chain, so very excited about the Cosmos ecosystem.
100%. I think MakerDAO really, like, I don't know, I've been here since 2017. So I was part of the Maker community from day one. So it's really surreal to hear, oh yeah, like 5-year anniversary. Because it's like how many DeFi builders have been inspired by this ethos of like safety first, not expanding too rapidly, a focus on careful risk management. And I've always said that, like, if you've designed a stable asset properly, then time is on your side, because every day that ticks by is more trust that has been earned by extension of being stable over an extended period of time. And so much of like the DeFi innovation on the stablecoin front, everyone kind of has DAI and MakerDAO to thank for that initial innovation. And I'm really curious to hear DAI's kind of vision for, beyond its 5-year anniversary, because there has been debates, right? Is it a lending platform, or is it a stable coin, or is it a MetaDAO, right? Like there's all these different, nuances of where does DAI go from here? And so Tadao, thank you for coming on. And I'm super curious to explore DAI's vision for ecosystems like Cosmos, obviously a rapidly growing ecosystem, and just learning about what you think the future has in store for MakerDAO as a protocol. So thank you for your introduction. Up next, we have Believe from So Many Year Finance. I believe Zucky will be up next. Awesome. The floor is yours for 4 minutes.
My stablecoin is IST, which I guess in this context But also Sommelier is, we do make a line of stablecoin products. We have our live Aave strategy, which rebalances between strategy with stablecoin lending on Aave. We have a bunch of new stablecoin strategies in the pipeline for January. The general space of like, stablecoins are the strongest product market fit in DeFi, right? Lending stablecoins, borrowing stablecoins, market making stablecoins, using stablecoins for payments, collateralizing like perpetuals, positions, stablecoins. Stablecoins is a form of on-demand leverage. Like, stablecoins are like the foundational element of DeFi. So from, I guess, my point of view is, it is great that we have this abundance of choice in Cosmos. It's great that we have so much of the infrastructure coming together, like lending and stable swaps, and ranged liquidity and order books all coming together, because we are now building the atomic primitives of a rich stablecoin ecosystem in Cosmos.
I'm super curious. Like, obviously, we have all these different decentralized stablecoins coming in, and with all the composability and interoperability of IBC, like it's going to be amazing to watch the primitives that get built on top of, it's building blocks. Everything continues to build.
Yeah.
I'm super curious to learn more about the role of USDC and centralized stablecoins in the vision for Cosmos. I know, like, on the consumer chain side,
I mean, that's another thing that I work on, right? I wear too many hats, but I'm working with the USDC team about bringing native USDC to Cosmos. The chain that we have been working with Circle to build was part of the interchain security testnets. We are aiming to be live to support the DYDX launch in March. Like, that's sort of our core thing. But DYDX is a user, and having USDC come natively into Cosmos is going to be a huge source. For the, like, any system that supports a PSM. So like IST. We'll be able to, start using native to US. There are all these open questions about how things like regulatory compliance are going to work in a multi-chain ecosystem that we're very interested in addressing as part of the work on the bringing USDC natively to Cosmos. How all of that interacts with decentralized stablecoins is like many, many question marks. There's a lot of work to be done. But we have an enormous opportunity to put all the pieces together. So yeah, I think USDC native to the IBC network, more stablecoins native to the IBC, centralized stablecoins, the decentralized stablecoins, the PSMs, the stable swaps, the lending protocols, all of these things, it's actually becoming a full picture.
Yeah, I think in our thought leader panel, we'll be able to maybe take a deeper dive into the role of consumer chains with something like USDC and versus decentralized stablecoins, and some of the risks involved across the line. Like, that's really what I want to laser in, is like, what are the biggest risks we're going to be seeing in 2023, 2024 on the DeFi side and stablecoin side, and how can Cosmos as a community really navigate any of those emerging risks?
You just hear this incredible, like, the market is anxious about the bridge stablecoins, Axor, USDC, Gravity, USDC, which are the primary sources of stablecoin liquidity right now in Cosmos. And the market is incredibly anxious, and the purpose of our work with centralized stablecoin issuers and interchain security is to create, like, sort of a stable anchor for that there can be basically just like Cosmos could grow by removing that anxiety.
I'm really excited to dig into that. We'll call that the four minute intro. So thank you. We'll see you probably in, how many minutes is up? Post keynote that I'm about to do. We will get back to this conversation. So thanks for the brief introduction. On that front, before we jump into keynote, I will give the 60-second pitch for Silk. So Shade Protocol is the host today. We're launching a privacy-preserving decentralized stablecoin called Silk. It's very unique in the sense that it's not pegged to the US dollar. It's the only stablecoin currently in the Cosmos that's going to be pegged to a basket of global currencies and commodities. At Shade Protocol, we believe that privacy is key for stablecoins to bridge back into our everyday lives, because privacy is an expectation. When you go to the grocery store and you buy something from the cashier doesn't know your bank balance, right? So if we need, in order for stablecoins to bridge back to our everyday lives, in order to bridge into commerce, there has to be some form of auditable privacy. Secret Network as a tech stack gives Shade Protocol that. Secret Network powers kind of a lot of this privacy vision. And with the interoperability of Cosmos, we're really excited to bring Silk to the world. And we think that it has properties that retain purchasing power, protects you against global volatility, that are truly, truly game-changing as like a fourth generation stablecoin. So that's the brief pitch of Shade Protocol and Silk. We will now transition to our keynote talk, which was pre-recorded. So Fisco, which is our event organizer, by the way, this is going to be me, and you can join me around the world on this. A round of applause for Fisco for organizing all of these different partners, the event, the presentation. He's the silent hero of this event. So thank you, Fisco. I know he can hear this, and all of your hard work is super appreciated by the Cosmos community. So with that being said, I will now step down. Hello, everyone. This is Carter Wetzel from Shade Protocol. Today, as your keynote speaker, I'll briefly be talking about stablecoins, the killer use case for Web3, and then I will briefly be showing two demos from Shade Protocol, two products that we're super proud of that we believe are part of the story of stablecoins in Web3. So today's keynote is titled Stablecoins, the Web3 killer use case. Fundamentally, the beginning of crypto was kicked off by Bitcoin, which has some extremely strong properties and promises. Bitcoin is all about consensus instead of command and control. It's focused on decentralization, that open source ethos, the permissionless participation that we all know and love. And finally, Bitcoin was focused on digital scarcity, a codified economic policy that couldn't arbitrarily be violated. And Bitcoin has seen amazing adoption today. It's still the #1 cryptocurrency after more than a decade. And as time has gone on, there begins to be questions like, why has Bitcoin not fully penetrated into commerce? And there's a variety of answers to this, and Bitcoin may very well be on the path to integration into commerce, but fundamentally there's this component of scarcity that ultimately lends itself to volatility. In Bitcoin, it's volatile. It's not attempting to create a specific stable price point. Instead, it's free flowing. It fluctuates with the markets, with capital inflows and capital outflows. And so Bitcoin's had this huge impact on cryptocurrency, but it kind of has three fundamental negative qualities that hinder its ability to be integrated into existing financial ecosystems and rails. And I would boil it down to three things. It would boil down to the volatility. It would boil down to the fact that it's slow. And finally, the fact that Bitcoin lacks privacy by default. Commerce needs privacy. If you go to a hot dog stand and you bought something with Bitcoin, the person on the other end, if they were smart enough, could know how much money you have in your wallet. In our existing lives, when we go to the grocery store and we buy something, we don't expect that the cash register and the cashier would know how much money you have in your bank account, right? And so this world of publicly transparent blockchains are these amazing fundamental public goods, but there's trade-offs to total transparency. And Bitcoin as the initial trailblazer, it doesn't have that baked-in privacy. It has that volatility in it, and it's slow. So ultimately, this is where stablecoins begin to come into the picture. Crypto was really hungry for a stable asset that people could store their value in, even within the volatile environment that is cryptocurrency. And so stablecoins are really focused on being stable, and they're focused on being fast. And we've seen incredible progress with this. We've seen, from centralized stablecoins to decentralized stablecoins like DAI and Frax and now IST and Silk. So many stablecoins are being launched, and they're solving this problem of we need stability, we need speed. And in order for a stablecoin to succeed, they need safe mechanisms for stability. We've seen what happened with Terra. We've seen what happened with Iron Finance. There's all sorts of stablecoins and experiments that are happening. And in order for us to truly bridge back to the real world, we're going to need blue chip, proven systems that have safe economics and safe mechanisms that have proven themselves. Additionally, stablecoins need speed for adoption. If we're going to have stablecoins at the heart of commerce in Web3 and Web2, you can't have a transaction that takes 60 seconds or a minute. We have to be able to have some amount of parity and competition on the speed front for merchants. People care about speed of settlement. And in crypto, we've kind of gotten used to maybe being okay with slower transactions, but we're always going to need to continue to push the envelope of speed. Stablecoins need interoperability. We need tech stacks where stablecoins can fluidly flow between different blockchains. They can flow throughout all of Web3. And so we're going to need communication protocols that allow for rapid stablecoin adoption. And finally, something here at Shade Protocol we're super focused on is we believe that stablecoins need privacy for commerce. There needs to be some form of auditable privacy where you can go and interact in commerce, you can interact in DeFi, you have your on-chain privacy, but you still have a path to auditability and compliance. And so between safety, speed, interoperability, and privacy, we believe that that would be what the end game, what the late game for stablecoin looks like. And today's summit is about the future of stablecoins. And the whole point of bringing together all these projects is that the future of stablecoins requires to not settle for the existing system. How can we continue to improve the attributes that are ultimately going to unlock value for consumers and for everyday folks? And that's why Shade Protocol, we're building Silk. It's a private, global, stable asset, and the stable coin that's pegged to a basket of global currencies and commodities. It has that privacy, it has that speed, and we think that Silk is going to play a huge role in Web3 in the next decade. And so today we'll be talking about it briefly. And of course, Shade Protocol, it's more than just stablecoins. We believe that privacy needs to be integrated into the heart of decentralized finance itself. So thank you for listening to this open little speech. I will now be showing 2 demos. The first demo is a demo of the Shade Bridge. It's an interface built on top of IBC that allows people to bridge their assets between all the different Cosmos blockchains. We believe at Shade Protocol that the first part of the user story is really moving assets around, and so building a beautiful bridge with a simple experience was really important for us if we want Silk, and not just Silk, but really any digital asset within the IBC and Cosmos ecosystem to traverse and go where it needs to go. That's that interoperability thesis. And after the bridge demo, we're also going to be showing you a demo of Shade, Lend, and Silk. This is the first ever public demo of Silk being live on testnet. We're super proud of all the hard work that's been put in the last year and a half. And today we'll be able to demo some of the products. Besides that, we have some wonderful speakers lined up today. We're really going to be digging into the future of stablecoins, the infrastructure around it, and the Cosmos ecosystem. So thank you all for your time. Be sure to grab some popcorn, relax. It's going to be a long summit, and let's dig in. Everyone, so just to explain what you just saw there. So first piece was the IBC bridge. This is going to be going on mainnet December 28th. And what we saw there was essentially bridging Secret Atom on Secret Network back to Cosmos blockchain. And then we actually just reversed the process. So we took Atom from Cosmos, brought it onto Secret Network, and then immediately wrapped it into its privacy preserving version. And that's kind of a world's first, the multi-execute transaction, where you saw how once it reached a certain page, it finished the IBC transaction, and the front end immediately detects that it was successfully transferred over, and it immediately, queries the user like, hey, wrap it with privacy right here, right now. So that type of like super easy user flow will allow the whole Cosmos to easily add privacy to their assets in like a frictionless bridge experience. So that's that bridge, and the beauty of that, it's not just a Secret Network bridge. Like you can go from Juno to Atom, you can go from Osmosis to Kajira. Like it's this bridge is for everyone to use. It's not just about Secret Network. It's a totally generalized bridge built on top of IBC. We took a lot of its inspiration from the Terra bridge and what they did there, but we really wanted to simplify it even more so. And then the second demo, what you saw there was Shade Lend, essentially the ability to lock up collateral and mint out Silk. And then what we showed in that video was that process of minting out the Silk, paying back the Silk in terms of paying off interest and re-withdrawing collateral. That's live on testnet, and we're super pumped about bringing Silk to the entire world. The third demo that we didn't quite have time to record and get on here was that Shade Swap is also on testnet, and Shade Swap also has a stable swap with it. So Lend, stable swap, DEX, stablecoin, all this stuff coming to you, the community, after a year and a half of hard work and development. So thanks for listening to the keynote. We will now transition back to zoomed out focus, not just Shade Protocol, not just Silk, but right now we'll be talking about the Cosmos with our thought leaders. And then after that, we'll be diving back into our stablecoin panel. So if you guys give us a 30 seconds, we will be right back. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Thought Leader panel. We're going to be having Zucky up, and we're going to be really deep diving the Cosmos ecosystem, predictions for 2023, some retrospective look back, and also his thoughts on decentralized finance and stablecoins. Going to do a little 40-minute deep dive here, really try to get into the weeds here. Unfortunately, Jack Zamplin could not make it in the end, just to do a last second scheduling component. So it will just be me and Zucky, but sit back, grab some popcorn. This is gonna be a fun one.
How's it going, Carter?
It's going good. It's going good. Super pumped for this. It's just having this many Cosmos DeFi projects. I in my heart, I know that this event one day will happen in person with these types of projects. It's going to be great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So just to kick things off here, like when you reflect on Cosmos, the Cosmos ecosystem in 2022, what were the biggest wins? What were the biggest failures? And then like after kind of having that retrospective, what do you think the Cosmos ecosystem will be defined by in 2023?
I mean, without a doubt, the biggest failure has been in the like demise of UST and the anchor carry trade, right? It's hard. That's the elephant in the room of 2022 in Cosmos is, like osmosis. Osmosis is liquidity incentives, their gauges, the anchor carry trade, people realizing that like one of the cheapest ways of getting in and out of anchor was through Atom. You know, all of these dynamics played a huge role in what was happening in Cosmos in 2022 and represented, and the collapse of UST was a huge blow to the Cosmos DeFi ecosystem. And so much of what was, and in to a certain extent, we were fortunate because of like some weird random technical things, like you know, Terra launched with a early version of CosmWasm that wasn't IBC compatible. So there wasn't a lot, there was actually less interoperability between Terra and the IBC ecosystem that was possible. Like only Luna and UST could really interoperate with the rest of the IBC ecosystem. So, I mean, without a doubt, it's painful for everyone, right? You know, I think many cosmonauts were in either Luna pools or UST pools on Osmosis, you were using Anchor, like, you know, just huge financial devastation across the ecosystem. I mean, another reality was, you know, a significant series of setbacks on Evmos. So, you know, between the Nomad bridge hack, the issues around the launch. So, you know, without like the honest reality of it is the future does look bright for Cosmos DeFi in 2023. But 2022 has been like largely a trial by fire. But so, you know, it has been great to see the Kujira team move from Terra, launch on Cosmos, bring their stuff, technology to Cosmos. Great drama has unfolded. Other things that I think are very true about Cosmos, though, is like, you know, we have, you know, the 2021 was like was sort of the peak of the sort of osmosis farming craze on Osmo as a hyperinflationary token, and started this trend towards hyperinflationary tokens. But, you know, looking back over 2022, you know, we don't have a lot to show for a lot of the like tokens that were given to stakers, given to liquidity providers in the ecosystem. You know, and also like, you know, the DEX, like we have the DEX ecosystem has, you know, you know, we're still in like very capital inefficient. Stable swaps just launched on Osmosis. Crescent is coming along nicely. I think is maturing. Injective is maturing. Looking forward to all of these other DeFi ecosystems launching in the ecosystem. These are all the things that I guess I think a lot about with Cosmos, which is, you know, we have to get 2023 has to be a big year of starting with Atom and then moving on, or like, you know, throughout the ecosystem, moving on from this sort of hyperinflationary tokens printed out of nothing, you know, highly, the whole ecosystem being oriented around like incentive-based liquidity to offer to like real utility, real revenue, true like really good incentive designs. And so we're all struggling with that. I think, you know, and it coincides with, you know, the disappearance of the sort of FTX Alameda liquidity engine / fraud.
Right.
Which is, you know, Cosmos was minimally exposed to that ecosystem, but so I guess these are all the things that I think a lot about in the need for Cosmos to start moving on. But like then I can talk about all the bright spots. like it is so exciting to see Mechatech and Skip bringing MEV engines to Cosmos. Even though the extractable MEV is very low, it's amazing to see both the technical infrastructure coming together, and we all hope that the volumes will come. It's it's things like Agoric finally launched, which has been, I've been working with the Agoric team since 2017. So, it's been, that's an incredible bright spot in my mind. Neutron, Juno are figuring things out. The Cosmwasm ecosystem with Secret and all of the rest of the Cosmwasm chains continues to grow. Osmosis is now really getting into shipping mode. So I think we are going to see, more capital efficiency, more and then ultimately, I think the nature of post FTX is crypto is going to, DeFi is going to have to provide its own liquidity. That's basically the future post FTX in my mind. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's a really good answer. I think Cosmos is really interesting to me because the tech is there. It feels like the leadership is there. The people is there. So why isn't the liquidity sticky yet? And a lot of it's tied to, we took the hard route, right? We didn't go, we just spin up an EVM chain and, fork, clone, whatever have you, everything seamlessly plugged in. It is.
No, apparently we mostly failed at trying to do. Let's be brutally honest about where we are, right? We've had modest at best success forking the EVM, setting up an EVM and cloning a whole DeFi ecosystem onto it. It hasn't happened yet on Evmos. It still could, but it hasn't happened yet. Canto has pieces of it, and is exciting, but also feels a little bit disconnected from Cosmos in some ways. So we have yet to produce, and the sexiest EVM apps like GMX are not on Cosmos. That's
it's interesting to me because in 2022 the biggest challenges that Cosmos really faced was really an event, right? In the sense that we had bridge risks, and we had a stablecoin that was the center point of liquidity collapse.
And we dodged this giant bullet with Dragonberry.
Also true. We don't like to talk about the Binance bridge stuff either. That's just failed to talk about that. But I guess in hindsight, separate from those events, is there any regrets or ways you wish our ecosystem would have been more focused on certain components versus other, in terms of prioritization? Because it's always a game of prioritization. Is there components of Cosmos's focus that you wish would have shifted a different direction in 2022?
It's honestly I feel like 2022 has been a year of somewhat missed opportunities, right? Across the Cosmos ecosystem, which is, on the flip side, it's we're resilient. We still exist. We're doing in many ways better than many other ecosystems. But I do kind of wish it's hard to fully summarize this, but it's I'm really glad that something like Stride and got into production. I'm really glad that Quicksilver launched. I'm really excited about Namada launching. I'm excited about having privacy options from both Secret and Namada going into next year. There's, I think MintScan has done an extraordinary job of making the ecosystem comprehensible to a lot of users. It is just so, it's so nice, to to be sending IBC packets and like be able to see success or failure of those things. Like they've done I mean, without a doubt, it's just like a great job. We've continued to gain more experience with IBC. But on the other hand, we have yet to see on Secret or on any of the CosmWasm chains like a real application that has caught on with users yet. Yeah, I don't know. And like USDC interchain security coming along and making as much progress, and the success of Game of Chains. Though there was the network halt, but it was a software bug, and it's a solvable problem. The success of interchain security, the progress on USDC, DYDX coming over to Cosmos, all of those have been huge wins. Yeah, so I don't know. Like we need more applications, we need more utility, we need to build we need to have more things on Cosmos that are like, you know, I think Dove has expressed a lot of jealousy of the success of GMX. And so I hope that inspires more builders on Cosmos to try to build something that captures the imagination of the user base. You know.
Yeah, I think I mean, in essence, it's like 2022 was an opportunity to find product market fit, but it's very difficult to do that when you have massive liquidity problems that pop up, right? And like that hurts some of the trust tied to it. And I also think that Cosmos has so many like lower down the stack builders that maybe there's less of like a obsession with like front ends and like those type, like there's components that still need to come along,
I mean,
right?
I think that's a great point, right? It's like we have to steal in Cosmos. We steel man a lot of infrastructure, right? We are infrastructure builders. Like there's a lot. We've been at this for 8 years, and we've been building infrastructure that whole time. And the infrastructure just needs constant work, right? Like everything, Cosmos SDK, Tendermint, IBC, all of these things face real competition in the wider blockchain universe. They require continuous investment. My work in the technical advisory board has been really, which hopefully, we'll be ready to share early in 2023, more of what's going on at the ICF. Now that I know it's like not as bad as, the rumors are, but like it's, and like, I think we're like really setting things up with the TAB for success in 2023 and 2024. But there's just an enormous amount of work that needs to go into the core infra layer. So like, yeah, it's hard as a cosmonaut. Like I'm building application layer stuff at Sommelier. I'm building application layer stuff with IST. So like, it's not like I don't spend huge chunks of my day dealing with application layer stuff. I also am dealing with like Tendermint and infrastructure layer stuff, interchain queries, interchain accounts, new IBC protocols, all of these pieces. We're also trying to onboard like a ever widening ecosystem of non-Cosmos SDK chains into IBC. Yeah, man, it's it is interesting, but like, yeah, we don't yet have a large enough community of devs who are just like, I think, grinding and focused on the app layer.
Yeah, but we'll get there. I think that the 2023 will be what I'm envisioning is a tipping point for interoperability and composability. Like we haven't quite reached that tipping point yet, where like interchain apps and simplified user experiences are fully unlocked. We're gonna get there. We're gonna get there. So we've had a nice little zoomed out view of 2022, 2023, and I want to transition. Of course, this is Stablecoin Summit. So I'm gonna like start off with the really hard question. We have this massive opportunity to have natively issued USDC, right? We also have decentralized stablecoins coming into fruition. both of them present certain risks on both the technical side, the economic side, and the ethos side. So when you think about the role of USDC, what's your thought process on it? And what do you think the relationship of USDC and the Cosmos is to decentralized stablecoins like Silk and IST, CMST, all the different stablecoins that are represented here today?
Yeah. So I think that there's a bunch of different moving pieces here. So one is USDC has the strongest product market. USDC has incredible product market fit in DeFi. Like that's the sort of core that's like the core reality of the situation, right? So a big part of what my work is trying to bring USDC to Cosmos is to have that infrastructural element, and it's like the amount of work that's involved is quite large, right? Like we have there, it's not just you kind of work with Circle, right? Like there are all these different, like how are the market makers and the issue and like the users of DYDX? What are their flows? How do you establish pathways in which someone can put in a bank account or a credit card number or a web widget and have USDC on their Cosmos chain of choice? All of those things are just hugely important. We also have IBC challenges, honestly, with all of these things as more and more chains compose, like this path dependency thing that IBC has, where you want to go back to people are going to want to go back to the USDC chain and then go to the so like if you borrow USDC on Umi, you're gonna bring it to the USDC chain and send it to the Noble, and then send it to like Osmosis to trade or something like that, right? So those experiences are going to become a much bigger deal, and we have a bunch of work to do to like make those tractable and easy for people to understand. But like, yeah. And so, the ethos of Cosmos, I don't know. And like the ethos of like, so the first thing is like, what is the ethos of Cosmos? The reality is every sovereign chain has its own ethos. We also seen, I think, more and more Cosmos with like different camps sort of emerging, right? Like there's the camp that looks at Kujira's approach to transparency around their approach and says that's against the ethos. There are going to be people who look at any stablecoin with a parity stability module, PSM, that it's using USDC and has a substantial amount of its issuance coming from USDC. Oh, that's just like a centralized stablecoin. It's against the ethos. Some people are going to look at USDC. I think the ultimate ethos that Cosmos has to adopt is pluralism, i.e., there is a space in this place for any ethos as long as there isn't fraud, right? Like every experiment should have a place in Cosmos as long as people are like, this is a real thing. And I don't think that I think ultimately, I go back and forth like a lot about like whether or not, I think that like in the immediate aftermath of the UST situation, that there was a lot of, the Cosmos core, longtime cosmonauts leaders in the ecosystem should have done more to protect the ecosystem against UST. And I'm like, I think now that I think more as we get away from it, it's like, look, the ethos has to accept everything. There are these experiments and disasters are going to happen. The job of Cosmos is to survive and embrace all possible spaces. So like that's kind of my view on Cosmos is we should endeavor to inform the people who participate in Cosmos about like the differences between all of these things, like how the privacy properties of a Namada and the privacy properties of a secret are different. But we don't need to. This is not about creating like religious wars around like a set of things in the ecosystem.
Yeah, I mean, I think pluralism is the most abstracted out, neutral perspective. I think the hard part is like every experiment has risk, and what's like the tail risk of a certain ethos tied to being like centralized stable coins are at the heart.
Every ethos has tail risk.
Exactly. Every ethos has tail risk, and I think
I think the scariest things are the ethos is that claim not to have tail risk.
Completely agree. And I guess the question I'm trying to find here is like it's really interesting because I know originally like consumer chain kind of thought process is like we eventually want real world businesses to have, you know, their own chains, and it's like we're trying to build a totally interoperable ecosystem where I guess there's a slider tied to centralization, decentralization. I guess in my mind though, the one exception to pluralism would potentially be liquidity. And I guess the reason I say that is because if you reach a tipping point in adoption tied to centralization of liquidity, then a lot of these other attributes become irrelevant because liquidity really is at the heart of everything that we're building. So I guess that would be my slight pushback to pluralism. Agreed on pretty much every conceivable perspective, except isn't there a unique risk tied to centralized forms of liquidity? It's okay to disagree. I want to provide a little
I
pushback.
disagree with the idea that these risks are unique. The risks are not not unique. The risks are of centralized stablecoins, I think, are not unique in the sense that they have risks that come from the legal system. They have risks that come from like nation state legal authorities. It's important as we're building USDC into the system that we're designing a mechanism to comply with court orders. Like these things are important pieces of the worldview that we have to that are part of it. And there are going to be counterparties that prefer those, and there are going to be counterparties that don't, right? And ultimately, pluralism is like you get to pluralism and sovereignty is like you get to pick your counterparties and your values.
Yep. No, I think that makes sense. I guess over time, there'll probably be different DeFi ecosystems emerge that are, or to your point, that's the beauty of pluralism, that are focused on the decentralized assets purely. And then you have ones that are somewhere in the middle and one that are super focused on it. So
I think
we'll have the
biggest problem of, so like, you want to know the like fundamental root problem of decentralized stablecoin is that unit bias is like such a problem for humanity. Like I'm like super aware of unit bias. I'm super aware of how like my life is denominated in dollars and I think in dollars, and like the US dollar as a unit of account like dominates my consciousness, and I'm aware of this flaw in my mind. But like this is universal to all humans, right? Like that unit bias pervades the way our and like the biggest problem of decentralizing is that like if we could escape unit bias, if we could like somehow abstract unit bias from our consciousness, our options for decentralization would be enormous. But like I think that represents the challenge of truly decentralized stablecoin builders. And like I mean, this is why, proposals like, Jay's photon proposal go nowhere, right? Is it's just unit bias pervades our consciousness. Like people denominate things in atoms, people denominate things in BTC, people denominate things in primarily in USD. And that unit bias kind of pervades our entire mind. And so if you want something really decentralized, you have to create an ecosystem that like sort of creates a culture that is like where you have such a large cultural change that you're actually denominating things outside of your unit bias. But I just like my perspective on it is basically like the principal enemy of decentralized in general is like the frailty of human cognition.
Fascinating. Yeah, I mean, I think anyone who's been part of the story of Bitcoin, like there's the Bitcoin maximalists that are like, well, one day like you'll think in terms of sats, or you'll think in terms of this, or and it's
I do view the like Bitcoin atom chart as like my a little and I do view like and maybe maybe so far that's represented in my mind the success of Cosmos. I think we might move into a world where the Bitcoin IBCX chart or the Bitcoin but like I do it is possible to denominate a lot of success in the ecosystem, a lot of metrics in the ecosystem in terms of Bitcoin. But yeah, it's like I pay for my coffee in dollars.
Yep. I guess the world I would envision is decentralized stables would one day be an aggregate of the many forms of stable assets that have all the unit bias that we all know and love and adopt, such that these unit of accounts would be extremely stable. Like you have a stable coin that's like it's $1.05, and maybe over the course of the year it appreciates against the dollar by 2 cents. And so most consumers holding it are like, oh, there's proximity to the dollar. It's very slow moving. I can maybe get comfortable with the concept. I think there's some on a spectrum of unit bias. You can get a stable coin that inherits a lot of the properties of decentralization, isn't directly pegged to a sovereign dollar, and can get pretty close to the unit bias psychology. But it's really never been done, and it's very, very bold, as you said. Like the ultimate challenge of decentralization is human cognition. I think that's so. You should write that one down, slap that on a plaque. We should get that on Wikipedia. Like that's a pretty awesome quote. But I guess the hope would be is we have to continue to aspire beyond it, even if it's a very real constraint. Because I think if we can do it, then it's worth it. But it's quite the challenge.
Yeah, like my business partner and co-founder of Occlusion and stuff like that has also been thinking a lot about identity in Cosmos, especially because we do so much governance here, right? Like that would be the other thing that's been interesting, right? Is that Cosmos has become like a really consequential and active and just like fraught, but like with like real Cosmos has real politics, and those politics has consequences. But like I think we are also starting to see the limits of like plutocratic mechanisms. So Christy's been thinking a lot about where identity fits into all of this stuff, which I think is relevant to the identity is even more relevant to the privacy work and all of this stuff.
Yeah, I've had a long-standing theory that like there's many countries that have failed to scale because of governance. So like there's like a subset of people are like, what's the value of governance? It's like, well, look to the real world, right? Like it's clearly like super critical, especially as the amount of value in these protocols grow. So I'm very curious to see how proof of stake and these how governance evolves. If you have like let's say a $100 billion Cosmos chain one day, it's like, do we want every stakeholder to vote on a proposal that's talking about $2,000, right? Like there's got to be like there's limits to these systems, and I think that maybe this isn't.
And I think like in designing USDC's integration into Cosmos, we've had to think a lot about that, and we're going to have something for the community out in next year, talking more about the governance. But it's been a huge conversation because, again, Circle doesn't want to be in a position of, oh, we have a court order that we need to comply with, and like governance is blocking about us.
Right. Yeah, I think that this will be the lifelong challenge of any protocol will be governance and the protection of consensus and the ability to govern succinctly. I think that's the models have to continue to improve. We have a long ways to go in Cosmos, so which is exciting. I mean, more power to the experimenters, and it's an experiment that we have to get right. Because if we get it wrong, there might be some major ramifications to governance not being able to scale with the amount of value that's in these protocols.
Yeah,
so
I worry about that a lot.
So I think we have 5 minutes. 5 minutes left here. So we touched on. I mean, clearly in your mind, USDC has distinct product market fit, and it's super important within pluralism to give it a platform, give it an opportunity to integrate into whatever Cosmos ecosystem will have it. I guess to close then, what's the role of the decentralized stablecoin? You obviously play a role in Agoric. You're obviously a fan of decentralized stablecoins. So what's your predictions for the role of decentralized stablecoins?
I'd say I would currently break it into two categories, basically. One category is the soft pegged assets. And the soft pegged assets are playing a very long monetary game, right? About really trying to create, or like the volatility dampened assets, about really trying to create an alternative that is not directly connected to real world assets, right? Like a crypto native thing. And like I've often felt that the cause, going, all the way back to basis, that like, you need the sovereign chain architecture if you really want to even try at this thing. And it's a huge ambition. And I think DOE is hugely ambitious in Terra. And we should continue to have ambitious experiments. Then you have something that is more like IST. And what I would say as I differentiate IST from it is IST is designed to maintain a stable target against the real world asset of the US dollar. But the biggest problem more is, how do you build a stable coin that has the most possible ways of minting it? So like most stable coins are actually in the ecosystem right now are supply constrained rather than demand constrained, right? Where it's like, oh, so treasuries tick up. If you put your stables in, Circle makes 4.5%, but you're holding USDC, you better find some place that you make more than 4.5% in DeFi to make up for the fact that you're not just sticking that into treasuries. The opportunity cost of these stables is non-trivial, and so those pieces. So now you have something like IST. IST can be minted from real-world backed assets. It can be minted from crypto native assets, and most powerfully, it is integrated into the Agoric. It is built out of the Agoric smart contract platform, which is natively multi-chain, natively async, natively speaks IBC, allows us to take advantage of everything that is happening in Cosmos DeFi, potentially as collateralization, minting, liquidation mechanisms. So ideally, that scales enormously.
Yeah, it's interesting the supply side restriction versus demand side. I think that's it's an interesting one, because one could argue, does liquidity scale with demand, or does demand scale with liquidity? Like on all of these stable coins, it's like,
I think there is an intuition though that it basically demand scales with supply, right? That stable coins actually have, like, people love them.
Yep. Well, that was our thought leader panel. Really appreciate the 40-minute chunk of time. I think it was a really nice deep dive into forward facing, retrospective. We tackled stablecoins, USDC versus decentralized stablecoins. We tackled some of the ethos components of pluralism, and we also got to touch on kind of governance as well and the importance of it. So really appreciate your time. Zucky, I'm sure in the future we'll have another Stablecoin Summit. Maybe it'll be in person, and just appreciate your time, and thanks for being a guest. I know the community really appreciates it.
Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for putting this on. Stablecoins are clearly like one of the biggest areas of engagement. We are also, and it like follows the through line post UST collapse of the ecosystem. And so, I think we're going to continue to have to educate, inform, discuss in the ecosystem.
100%. Happy building, sir. And with that, we'll be taking a brief couple minute break here. Go to the bathroom, maybe grab your lunch quick, grab your popcorn, because up next is the stablecoin deep dive. Never before has there been this many stablecoins on one panel. I am stoked to moderate this. We will be back shortly. Welcome back, everyone. Before we begin the stablecoin panel, we're going to be doing brief 2-minute introductions of Nuon and Frax, two awesome stablecoins that are being represented. They weren't able to do the intros at the beginning, so we're going to briefly fit them in here right now. So without further ado, we're going to be pulling up Nuon and super pumped for them to give their little 2-minute introduction. Hello, Stefan. 2 minutes. The floor is yours. Even harder. Before it was only 4 minutes. Now we're down to 2 minutes. So good luck, sir. The floor is yours.
Hey, Carter. Thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you to being here. Right, I'm super excited, as always, to be on another decentralized stablecoin, flat coin panel. Basically, we launched Nuon as a flat coin, and basically, in simple terms, think of it as a synthetic perpetual pegged to your cost of living. And the cost of living is calculated on a daily basis and updated daily by Truflation. Truflation is an independent source of inflation, tracking 18 million items on a daily basis from 50 plus online real-time sources. And so we're excited to be bringing that out and launching that next month live, finally, after a number of audits. So it's CoinFabric has done the audits. We're working with Chainlink on the proof of reserves, and we're going to launch it on the EVM networks.
Amazing. I said it for 2 and you did it in 60 seconds. So now it's my chance to brag about you guys. I think the flat coin as a concept, something that's pegged to the cost of living, is such a powerful and gutsy product. And I know Nuon's been hard at work with this, specifically Truflation. If you haven't looked up Truflation, be sure to check it out. Redefining our definition of inflation, because what's currently being used by centralized entities to track inflation is quite simply insufficient, inaccurate. It's not precise. It's not enough. And so, Stefan, with Nuon, what you guys are doing is really a brave experiment to gather accurate data and to build a stablecoin on top of that data.
Yeah, no, and I mean, yeah, in essence, we call it sort of unbelievable times that we're living in right now. And through those times, we need believable data. So we're pulling believable data and building out something that, yeah, I mean, to your point, people are really nervous, right? Stable coins, where's that market? Where is it from a regulatory standpoint? Why are we still going down this path? And then ultimately, it is pegged to a cost of living. So it's not tied to a US dollar. It's not tied to a nation's currency or a specific policy that's defined by others. And so it'll be interesting to see how this experiment transpires. And, you know, we're getting a lot of support. I think Vitalik just did a post on Cointelegraph, or an announcement on interview on Cointelegraph. And, you know, this is one of the things that he sees 2023 being the opportunity, the market of opportunity being Flatcoin. So let's hope we can make it happen.
And no better time than to bring together all of these decentralized stablecoin builders when we're on the cusp of real commerce and adoption. So thank you for your introduction, Nuon. We look forward to having Stefan on in the panel in just a few minutes from now. But before we do that, we have a very, very special guest. Sam from Frax, from the Ethereum ecosystem, was willing to join this summit today. So Sam, welcome. This is your chance to kind of give a 2-minute introduction to Frax before we jump into the larger stablecoin panel.
Yeah, thanks, Carter. Thanks for having me. So I'm Sam, founder of Frax Finance. Frax is a stablecoin protocol, and in fact, today is the second birthday of the Frax protocol. So we actually launched on December 20th, 2020. So Frax is officially 2 years old today. Frax, the way that I like to think about it is that its vision is to be a stablecoin protocol that has both the best stablecoin for the current unit of account of the world, which is the dollar. So that's the Frax peg stablecoin. And then also what we see as the successor to the US dollar, which is a stablecoin, as Stefan brilliantly said, it's a flat coin, kind of like what Balaji has talked about, or a stablecoin that is pegged to a basket of consumer items or standard of living. And so we have a second stablecoin called the FPI, which, just like Nuon and its vision, as Stefan was saying, is pegged to not a national unit. It's not pegged to the dollar. It's not pegged to the euro. It's pegged for us to the CPI, which is the current method, but with the long-term goal of making that CPI basket on-chain with governance voted indices and weights. So Frax is kind of a stablecoin centric kind of vision DAO, so to speak, right? And so Frax, the dollar peg stablecoin, is the 5th largest stablecoin with about a 1.2 billion, give or take, supply. And FPI has been out for about 7-8 months, making it the first kind of stablecoin that's not pegged to a national unit. So it's the first kind of flat coin, as Balaji would say. He coined that term. And yeah, it's been great. FPI is about 60-70 million market cap, which is still pretty new. It's totally a new system, but people are using it. And it's really exciting to see other stuff like Nuon that are launching, and we're super excited about that. I've been talking to Stefan about it a lot because we can have deep curve pools, liquidity, and just have different kind of financial system that's still stable, right? Rather than having to have this choice between national currency that's somewhat pegged to a standard of living versus crypto that's decentralized but extremely volatile. Now you don't have to give up volatility for decentralization, which is a very, very good thing. So
yeah, I think it's we're going to be seeing these 4th generation of stablecoins that are brave enough and courageous enough to move beyond just sovereign currency pegs. And one of the previous speakers, Zaki, he said unit of account, like unit bias, is essentially one of the greatest challenges to real decentralization, as people are so heavily tied to sovereign currency. So as we roll out this next generation of stablecoin, what does it mean to educate users on these types of the kind of moving pegs that are super strong? But yeah, really appreciate the introduction on Frax. We're now going to be jumping onto the stablecoin panel with everyone. And yeah, super pumped to have you on, Sam. There we go. Now we're in. Oh boy, here we go. My, oh my. Has there ever been 8 stable, 7, 6, 8, 8, 7? It's 7 because me and Christian are on the same team. Has there ever been 7 stable coins ever on the same panel in the history of crypto? I believe this is a world's first.
Now get us physically together.
That's next. That's next. This, if everyone loves this, then I think we do a 2023 Stablecoin Summit in person, focused on decentralized finance and stables. I think that would honestly be awesome. So to kick things off, I think we just do 20-second introduction. who are you? What's your role with your project? And then right after we do those quick intros, I really want to just get down to some deep questions that are only viable when you have this many very in-depth folks in the same place. So we're going to cut straight to the chase. Now the fluff, right to the hard questions on stablecoins. So Sid, if you want to kick us off, 20-second intro, we'll just go one person at a time.
Hey, Carter, thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm Sid. I'm one of the co-founders of Comdex and also Composite, which is the stablecoin that we're building on the Comdex chain.
I'm Dean Tribble. I'm CEO of Agoric, which is a platform for smart contracts. I helped design IST, but it's launched, and now I can tell you lots about it. But it's controlled by a community now.
Dove?
Cool. Yeah, I'm Dove, and much like Sid, a co-founder. I'm a co-founder of Kujira, and nothing more needs saying.
Christian?
I'm Christian. I'm head of engineering at Shade Protocol and also the lead engineer of Shade Lend.
Awesome, Stefan.
Hey, I'm Stefan, founder of Nuon. A flat coin, which basically think of it like a synthetic peg to the cost of living.
Awesome.
I'm Sam, founder of Frax Finance. Frax is a two stablecoin protocol, Frax and FPI.
Hey, I'm Tadeo. I'm the facilitator for the Data Insights Core Unit, a team that is involved in all data-related projects at MakerDAO. And our stablecoin is DAI, a over-collateralized crypto asset backed that is currently going on to now real-world assets and other endeavors.
Awesome. So every builder here has an ethos of decentralization. Simultaneously, I know at the heart of stablecoins is a yearning to get Web3 truly adopted and integrated into our everyday lives. So that is my first question for all of you. It's 2022. You know, the advent of smart contracts around 5, 6, 7 years. Like, right? How many years you want to pick? My question is, why have stablecoins not penetrated back into everyday commerce? Whoever wants to kick it off. Let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah, I actually have a good view on this. So I actually think that stable coins, just unanimously overall as a concept, are one of the points in crypto that has product market fit. Now, maybe not in real world commerce yet, because there has to be merchants that accept it. But I think there's very few people that would argue that stable coins are not a good idea or are not something that actually brings value to everyone. I think the more interesting aspect here is, as you said, the decentralization and the types of stable coins, right? Like on this panel, we don't have any fiat coin to my knowledge, unless someone here is a fiat coin. But basically, the two kind of designs that I just, there used to be 3 designs, like, with the algo stables and stuff. And I think a lot of that's just merged into the idea of having on-chain collateral versus having fiat collateral, right? And so the more important thing is this stablecoin trilemma that I always talk about, which is, in order for stablecoins to really get into the mainstream market, there has to be a clear understanding of what the trade-offs are for different designs. Otherwise, there's going to be just this constant, jostling of, the fiat coins versus the decentralized stable coins. That, to me, the most interesting aspect of stablecoin design in the next 1 to 2 years is who solves and what will solve the stablecoin trilemma, personally.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Sam. I just think from a simplistic point of view, and ourselves included, I guess, I wonder if it's also just the temptation to be always sucked into the blockchain realm. And as I say, I'm speaking for the whole. Well, not that I can speak for the whole space, but I just mean from what I've seen. I wonder if there is always a temptation to kind of keep within the blockchain space and to make sure that works really well. And as I say, we've been guilty of it, and I wonder if we all need to. I don't know the answers, but I think just pushing, even if it's a tiny thing, like trying to find some vendors on the ground and in emerging countries that can hit the ground running with commerce payments. But then, you always have the flip side of that, right? So you can always make the transaction, but then somebody needs to kind of get fiat out the other end at the moment. So yeah, this is kind of where I feel the tricky bit is. It's okay to make a system that allows stablecoin as payments, but then what do you do beyond that? So that would be something I'd be interested to hear all your guys' point of view, right? Is we don't want to just be the kind of on and off ramp for people to go back into that same system, right? So I'd personally be curious to hear how we can all put our heads together and solve that, because we've had conversations with exchanges, for example, centralized exchanges, shall I say, and they are looking at just becoming on and off ramps ever since the whole FTX drama. So we should probably be careful not to become that same thing, right? Like we build these amazing systems and then we're just like the kind of on and off ramp. So anyway, it's more of a general topic, because that's probably something to be wary of, I imagine, for all of us.
So there's also, mostly crypto's early in mainstream adoption. A lot of our focus is how do we get to mainstream adoption through developers, but stablecoin, credit cards work pretty well at the consumer level, right? For wire transfers and international payments, not so much. That's the place where there is vast cost, vast bureaucracy, vast pain, and stablecoins have an opportunity there. Modular, they're going to have to solve the regulatory kinds of questions in order to integrate into those mainstream cases. The other thing is, right now, it's only relatively recently that we're able to tell the difference between, solvent, robust stablecoin models and experimental, interesting ones, or ones that, no, for years people said, the UST model is crap, and oh, look what happened, right? And so from the outside, they're going to want to really care about solid, robust models that they can rely on if they're going to transition to using that. A big speed / price advantage is good. But it's also got to fit with, if I'm a shipper, I've got all sorts of, regulatory and reporting requirements and stuff like that. And, you want to integrate into TradFi, you got to solve some of those problems. I think there's a good synergy there and a lot of value we bring to that multi-trillion-dollar market. But there's more work to be done, and we're just at the beginning of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think these stable coins have gone through an interesting journey, right? You look at Tether, it came out with Binance, right? Binance didn't have any fiat and on-off ramp, right? It was Bitfinex that helped them get Tether and then build the liquidity associated with all the trading pairs and then with the other exchanges. Then you had USDC come out, and they really also provided the liquidity across the EVM networks with the DeFi Summer. And so all of a sudden you saw, but these were both centralized entities that really sort of came out and under a decentralized sort of framework came out and created awareness of this new product or novelty product called stablecoins, right? And at the same time, I worked at Bitcoin.com. I was leading Bitcoin.com over there, and we scaled and tried to make peer-to-peer payments work using Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, and Ethereum. And it was really difficult because people don't want to be that person that spent, X million of dollars on a pizza. Because I spent, regardless psychologically or not, you converted it into a stable coin and you spent that money buying a pizza, or you actually spent the Bitcoin. But psychologically, you're spending the Bitcoin, which will have value tomorrow. That was just not going to happen. But I think now, with inflation as high as it is in most markets, in the UK, it's up at the 18% if you use maybe more believable data. In the US, we're at 6%. Argentina's living with 100%. Turkey's living with X, and ultimately, if you look at the currencies that we're using around the world today, they're all digital anyway. Who uses cash today? I mean, we use cash for micro transactions, maybe even coffee we pay without credit cards, etc. So do we still need those off-on ramps? What we do need is POS integrations. So is there a way for us to work with point of sales integrations, not proof of stake integrations, with point of sales integrations, right? So getting on with the all of the world payments, all of these guys that are building out and distributing payment solutions, CryptoPay, AnyPay, Clover6, coin payments, etc. Can we build a network with those entities and those individuals and get them, if they're not already adopting, ERC20 or Cosmos chain solutions, how can we get them to adopt multiple different currencies? Because for them, the swapping in and out is no problem. And for them to provide the payments and the settlements shouldn't be a problem. It's the conversion into the national currency when they need to pay rent or pay. But those lending facilities, think about it. So the Bitcoin miners started off having pay, they were earning Bitcoin and they had to pay in fiat to pay for their electricity costs. They had to pay in fiat for rent. That's how the whole lending mechanism grew. Can we build new lending mechanisms around stablecoins with these POS vendors in the middle to then provide the liquidity to the necessary merchants so they can pay their electricity bills and their rent if that is still needed to be paid in fiat? That's, to me, the value chain that I think we as a consortium can help sort of grow as a community, or as a constituents in that community, helps really scale.
Yeah, I think essentially point at, like, we need to be able to get stablecoin projects in touch with point of sales folks and actually build those rails. And I really like the point of, to Dov, your point, like recreating, do we really want to recreate on-ramp, off-ramps? Like, is that actually, or is there something more here? And the answer is, yeah, of course there's something more here. We all believe that there's something more here than that. So next question here, we kind of talked about why isn't it fully been integrated into commerce. I now kind of want to pivot to lessons on risk. 2022, we saw the largest implosion of a stablecoin that many people believed in. Of course, there's also iron finance as well. So Tadao, Sid, and Krish, I know you guys haven't talked yet, so this question will kind of be pointed at you guys and others can hop into here as well. But what were the biggest lessons learned in 2022 tied to the different stablecoin models? And I'll pose the question, is the dream of an algorithmic stablecoin dead? And what I mean by that is, at what line is collateralization enter into an unacceptable point? Because we obviously have Sam on this call, fractionalized reserve system to a degree, and it to date has worked well, and it has a much stronger collateralization than Terra. But like, where is there a line in the sand? What do we think that looks like? It's kind of a spicy question. So I'll open the door. Sid, I know you're chomping at the bit to answer this one. Then we go to Christian, then we go to Tadao.
For sure. I think it's a very interesting question. Quite a lot of times when I think about the whole UST situation, I feel like if UST was just 3 times as big as it actually was, it might not have ever depegged. It might have been too hard for anyone to actually attack it. And if it did depeg, it would take down way more with it than it did when it did. So it works as long as people choose to believe in it. And that's kind of, where it becomes tricky. I feel like it was a very interesting experiment. I mean, I like to call it an experiment because it was essentially that. It was an economic experiment which went horribly wrong for Terra. My bias is obviously towards kind of over collateralization, because if you look at, as long as traditional finance has existed, and so many things in traditional finance have existed, they all quite heavily rely on over collateralization, because a lot of times the collateral asset itself is not as liquid when it comes to real world transactions. When you collateralize a house to take a loan against it, the house is essentially not as liquid as what other assets you could probably collateralize there. So in that regard, it does feel like over collateralization is the rather safer approach to go for when it comes to building stablecoin models the way they have been built. And I think MakerDAO kind of for the time that it has existed, the DAI stablecoin, for as long as it has existed, has proven itself to be quite robust, given that liquidations do work as they're expected to. So to that regard, my bias still lies towards over-collateralized models. I do believe they're more robust when it comes to long time frames of several years, when you account for many different types of volatilities that markets usually face in that time period. Of course, what's been done at Frax, I find is very interesting. I've spent actually a lot of time studying Frax's model, and I was truly very, very interested and intrigued by that. And part of me wanted to kind of, endeavor on that route as well when it comes to when we had to make the decision of building what we wanted to build with Composite as well. But kind of just reading the situation of the market at the time, it just it made more sense for us to go for the over collateralized route. So I'd say my biases lie in that direction.
So I think I have an interesting view on this. Is the only stablecoin probably on the panel that has any kind of like direct relation to possibly saying we're even part algorithmic. What I want to say first though is Frax has never broken its peg a single time today. It's its second birthday. So what we've done is we have a system where part of the assets are backed by hard exogenous collateral, right? Like over collateralized loans, USDC, stablecoins, protocol, liquidity, etc. And the other half is algorithmic with volatile assets like ETH, FXS, which is the governance token itself of Frax protocol, and these kinds of things. Now, what I will say is Frax is almost actually much closer to Maker and like over collateralized models than anything Terra was. We're actually right around 94% CR. Terra was like 0, and they were trying to actually become more and more like Frax towards the end of their lives by having a bunch of exogenous collateral, and I don't think they ever really got to anything higher than like a 10-20% CR or something like that, which is clearly not enough, right? And so we know that Frax at least works for 2 years now. There's empirical data, and this kind of thing with a very, very, very small amount of supply that is backed by volatile assets, right? And then a very, very, very large amount that is backed by exogenous, stable, over collateralized loans, etc. Those kinds of assets, right? So we know that actually works. However, one thing I will say is that I think people get surprised when I say I do personally prefer over collateralized stablecoins. Like they are safer. So people actually scratch their head when I say this, because for example, if all things being equal, if you're provided a stablecoin with 120% CR and one with like 94%, obviously pick the 120% CR. Now, the thing people don't think about is, well, people should prefer a 300% CR stablecoin. It is safer than 120% CR, right? But the cost to creating the money is extremely, extremely expensive to create a 300% CR, right? Like, why doesn't someone fork MakerDAO and say, hey, everyone wants over collateralized stablecoins, right? So we're going to over collateralize this one, and it's 300% CR. It's much safer than DAI. If ETH or DAI or something has a black swan event, this one will still like not be under collateralized, but like DAI might be under collateralized. Well, the answer why no one does that is no one would use this like 300% over collateralized DAI, because to create it, you'd have to put $3 worth of ETH and then you'd get a loan, while Maker you can put like a $1.20 per DAI and take out that loan, right? So there is actually some useful and important concept of capital efficiency that I think is lost, because you don't actually want obviously something as messed up as like UST, right? That implodes. However, you also can't have something with 1,000% CR. I would love 1,000% CR stablecoin. Hell, I would use it over Frax. I would use it over DAI. I would use it over Tether, use USDC, but that doesn't exist, right? And so my personal view is that the end state of all of these stablecoins with the most best crypto economics, with the best capital efficiency, is something on chain right around 100% CR, something right around Frax. Maybe Frax should approach 100% CR, admittedly, right? Or something right around 98%, 102%, 103%, right around 100%, because that is technically, by definition, that is the most exact, capital efficient, solvent, and safe and competitive type of currency. So that's actually my personal take on this whole kind of algorithmic stablecoin stuff.
Yeah, thanks for jumping in there, Sam. I know it's the content, because I've listened to hours of you, by the way, which I'm sure many of us have at this point. I know, like, you believe, like, historically there's been a trend towards fractionalized systems because they are just more efficient ways of making markets. But of course, when we exist within this totally digital environment, like you can't really trend that strongly in that direction, but there's still profitability to be had within the protocol if you are somewhat fractionalized, right? But Tadao, I know you represent MakerDAO, and there might be a different philosophy from your perspective on the risk side. So what's your take on the question of algorithmic, partially fractionalized, over collateralized? Where do you see things heading, and what were the biggest problems you saw in 2022, 2023?
I mean, to be honest, I do agree. I do agree. Ideally, we have 100% CR, and also we get to basically absorb any shocks that we have in the system. I think what we're trending towards is, or at least one of the answers is really diversification. The real problem we have nowadays in our market is like everything is correlated. So when one asset goes down, everything goes down. So like my point here is let's say we look at crypto collaterals essentially as a single asset. So you need to diversify outside of that. So our response to that has really been the real assets going outside, which again, it has its inherent problems and the issues of centralizations and having to deal with institutions. But hopefully us and really the industry as a whole, we're able to onboard these assets and represent them on chain in a way that once they enter, we're able to trade them permissionlessly. In that, it's something great about decorrelation is that something like half of your portfolio, like a significant amount of your portfolio can decrease in value, but then you're still over collateralized, or you're still fully collateralized, let's say, and then your entire system is working to the point of well, we have the real issue that we have is liquidity. It's like you need to be able to ensure the maximum amount of liquidity as possible. The moment you have, let's say, low liquidity, then the value proposition crumbles, the user experience is destroyed, and that's kind of quite tied to capital efficiency in itself. And it's like, do you want to reach the next billion? Well, you can't really, as I was saying, like you can't really ask them for a huge amount of over collateralization. My big, let's say, question is why, like, all these problems are not really fiat-backed stablecoins don't really have these issues that we here have deal with, and yet they haven't reached that let's say mass adoption that we are all expecting there to happen. And to be honest, like what I'm kind of happy to have seen this year is really let's say during the Luna craze, it was kind of just like the annoying person in the corner of the room shouting that this is wrong, that this is the wrong model. It's really nice to see competing new models that are actually quite safe, at least by design. Let's say Aves GHO and Curve's also stablecoin design seem to be like pretty interesting implementations of that. Similar to Aves' proposal of having, I think they're called facilitators or governors. Maker has a distribution channel for DAI called D3M, which essentially is plugging liquidity straight into other protocols. Again, it has its inherent risk, but they're say separate from again going for this diversification. We're looking to kind of have different vectors of risk that again, as a whole, you're able to manage properly.
That's a awesome answer. I think it's super interesting, the relationship between over collateralization and capital efficiency tied to depth of liquidity, right? Like there's your stable coin is only as scalable as liquidity, like moving with it, right? And growing with it. So before, like there's two really big topics I want to hit on this panel, kind of remaining big questions. One of them is regulation, and the other one is the risks of centralized collateral. But before we jump into the regulation discussion, Christian, you're the last one who hasn't jumped in here yet. Specifically, I know you're the one stablecoin on this panel that has privacy by default. So what is the role of privacy and stablecoins in your opinion? And what's that role? And then once you've answered that, we will then pivot over to kind of the regulatory question as a collective group.
Yeah, privacy is an interesting one because with these over collateralized stablecoins, lending is a very key point, or a very key way that these stablecoins maintain their value. It's entirely how they maintain their value, actually. And lending is fundamentally competitive in the sense that if you could change the price of someone's collateral, you could liquidate them profitably, and obviously the borrower doesn't want that. So in the case of totally transparent loans, obviously everybody's collateral and loan transactions are totally public. That is one of the selling points of these distributed ledgers in the crypto space. But with the privacy, you could take out a loan totally privately. No one will even know that you took out the loan. No one will know what collateral you used. No one will know what your liquidation price point is, and that makes you resistant to market manipulation. So, a use case there is if you're an ETH user and you want to put some money into some high risk position, and you're maybe there's not enough liquidity there, and you're afraid of being targeted and liquidated, bridge your money over, lock it up in a private loan, and no one's going to know. No one will even know that you even what you did with your money after you bridged it. They won't even know you had loaning on your mind. So that is a really, really nice advantage. And it's not even unique to Silk necessarily. It is right now, but the ability to use the network for private lending is available to anyone in the Cosmos if they use the contracts to do it. So it's something I'm certainly excited to see more of, and I think it's a pretty big selling point that is only really now just coming to the surface.
100%. I'd also add to that I think in order for us to bridge back to commerce, which was one of the earlier questions, I think we're going to have some form of privacy for businesses. Like imagine you're running all your commerce on a blockchain and timestamps are publicly visible, the amount, maybe the product. Like we can't do commerce without privacy because privacy is a protection and it's a security. So anyways, just wanted to quickly give Christian a chance to talk about that since he was the last.
Before you go,
before we go,
you leave the mechanism question, I want to respond to something that Sid here said, which is that Luna was an experiment. And because we have this collection of people, one of the key things about an experiment is you can talk about whether it's good or bad. You can have a discussion about it, and have it not be the case that saying anything negative just gets shouted down, right? The economics of Luna were insolvent. They were bad from the beginning, and people understood that. But the cult of personality persuaded a lot of people to stick their necks way out, right? And, I've been concerned historically about Frax because they've got a little bit of that same thing, but they're actually an experiment. You can talk about it, and they've got a good point that, well, if it's only this little bit and we've got a knob, maybe that makes sense, and it deals with over-collateralization. So it's really interesting, and it's an experiment. But if any of us here or any other project starts going into the realm of shouting down an objection as opposed to having real direction of it, that's a signal that we should pay attention to. But otherwise, we really want the experiments, but we want experiments that are really focused on giving real solid economic value as opposed to trying to take control of the network or doing a money grab. And so, and this crew does, is really bringing a lot of value to that overall, stablecoin ecosystem. And I want to note that particular distinction as we all go forward.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Dean. And indeed, for 2 years we've had a perfect peg, and a lot of stuff is indeed Frax as an experiment, and I appreciate the confidence there. And yeah, obviously there's been a lot of feedback, right? And like I said when I was just actually talking, perhaps honestly Frax should approach 100% CR and do the thing that everyone was talking about. Is the ideal thing on chain is 100% CR. Like it was said, like fiat coins don't suffer from this over collateralized, under collateralized thing. They just always can stay at 100%. So perhaps the end game for the Frax tech is to demonstrate that you can stay essentially at equivalent 100% CR without extreme inefficiency, but without insolvency, right? So I totally agree.
Yeah,
so,
Dean,
Sam, just out of curiosity.
Oh,
Right.
I was
Yeah,
gonna say, just appreciate, Dean, the fact that like we have an ethical responsibility as a group to design good experiments and to have a dialogue, because social dialogue is a form of risk mitigation against bad experiments being attempted. So I wanted to jump in there. We are going to pivot to the regulatory question. Stefan, you had something you wanted to say. If you can keep it like under 30 seconds, you feel free to jump in there.
Yeah, no, I wasn't going to say anything. I was just going to ask Sam a question, really. You know, and he and I have spoken about it in the past, and now with Binance, right, having a run on their bank, if you will, you know, over, I think, course of 2 days, having to release $6 billion worth of Bitcoin. One of the things he says is that we in the crypto industry shouldn't comply with the traditional fiat banking approach of fractional ownership, right? You know, what's our collective thought maybe here, you know, just not only to Sam, but is this something, you know, we should be 100% collateralized, or is this something, because it's digital money, there's a much faster run on the bank than you would expect in the traditional actual paper money world of the fiat, you know, legacy?
I think there's a
traditional
good
finance.
distinction here, and this actually goes right into the regulatory discussion, is I think there's a good distinction between economics and regulation. So we're about to talk about regulation, but I think economics are kind of sort of like laws of physics, where it's like it doesn't matter how whether something's a digital market or like a traditional market of like finance and papers and MySQL DBs or something like that. The rules of markets, of bank runs, of interest rates and stuff still apply the same way. Now, whether the laws and regulations are outdated and they should say something else, like, for example, I don't think that many people agree anymore in the year 2022 that you have to have at least $1 million of net worth for your own protection to be able to make the decision to whether to invest in something or not, right? So like that is something that is a regulatory law that should not be the same with digital markets. When you have the internet, when you have adults making decisions about what they want to do with their money, they can go to Las Vegas and gamble it. But if you say, oh, this is gambling for digital assets, it's all of a sudden not allowed unless you outlaw it and make it as difficult to do as like a IPO of like a multi-billion-dollar company, right? So I just want to have like a good distinction. I agree with regulatory stuff should be different. I don't think that the same laws about, you know, 100-year-old or orange orchards and securities offerings and stuff necessarily applies to a lot of the digital assets today, right? But capital markets still behave the same way, whether they're you know, digital or whether they're traditional and analog, right? And so those kinds of things are indeed the same, in my personal opinion.
So that being said, we'll start off with Dov and Sid on this one, specifically Dov. You can kick us off here. What is the role of regulation? It's a question there. And then what is the role of regulation tied to stablecoins? And where do you think we're headed? And what do we need to do as an industry, a collective group of builders trying to find that ethical line of compliance versus progress?
Yeah, it's a great, yeah. I mean, and just basically what I'd say is I agree with Sam there, but just to add on to that, it really is a tricky one. So just to give you one example, there's been this whole concept of, do you allow your own native token as collateral for your stable coin, right? And just a few months ago, that was seen as being completely okay, and then suddenly that became not okay. So, which I totally understand, but I guess I don't think the answer I'm going to give is going to be very definitive. But all I can say is that I think at the moment we're definitely in this weird cauldron of being definitely between regulation and progress, just like you said, Carter. But I think that we have a ways to go, basically, before we can just say, okay, we're breaking away as this, you know, completely digital entity, and we just get to go and make our own rules. Unfortunately, that isn't the case right now. We all know that. I think especially you guys in the States, right? There's a lot more heavy regulation. You've got to be a lot more careful. But what I will say is that I think technological advances do tend to push the progress that we want to see. It has happened before, it continues to happen, and it's never an easy fix. So this isn't like a definitive answer, of course, because no one has it, but I think that I think, Dean, you said it earlier, that everyone in this panel now is actually searching for something that is legitimate, right? I don't think there's people on here that are trying to do something that is going to scam people. We are trying deeply, as you've all said, post UST, post everything that we've learned to grow and make something better. So I don't know. I honestly think the answer in pretty much both those questions is just to keep doing what we've doing. Like try and have honest people rise to the top. Try and have like honest practices in your designs rise to the top, and then to just keep on making sure that we are pushing the envelope, obviously in terms of tech, but what can we do? We have to toe the line, right? Like, for example, the kind of, and I know I call them regulations because I don't even know what to think about them. You know, if you think about someone from outside of the US, it's hard to even know, truthfully, what the actual law is. Sid, you probably feel the same. A couple other guys on this chat. It's like, is this a global law? Like, but at the end of the day, I think it's the responsible thing to do to look at I guess we can call it the sort of like general crypto law that we all look at and read and perceive, and then just keep on pushing forward and making sure that we can make inroads, because this isn't going to be a quick answer. So yeah, it's unfortunately, yeah, Carter, it's not something I can answer quickly, but what we are doing at Kujira is making sure that we stand by the current, laws, regulations, as I've just said, however you define those, because they're very, very loose and very confusing. But at the same time, I believe that if we keep on, like we're all doing in this panel, pushing for something that isn't a huge experiment, let me put it that way, and isn't something that, look, if we're all talking about over collateralization in some way or form, I think we're on a good wicket. So yeah, long story short, I think that if you think about it, we have made great progress. So, I mean, I think we all look at these huge doom events as being like, I think all of us here, we think, oh, we've gone back 10 years, but we haven't. We've gone back like 5 minutes. So I think doing what we're doing at the moment, pushing forward with responsible methodologies is the only thing we can do. And then continuing to just, balance this weird curve between some, crazy regulation and what we think is right. And I personally believe that if we keep on pushing in this direction that we all are, I think we'll get somewhere. We won't get all the way, right? We know, like, we're intrinsically against, like, sort of, I guess, the ultimate government policies, but we'll get somewhere. It's kind of like inch by inch. It's not going to happen overnight. So I personally believe that what we're all doing here is going to result in multiple forward steps, but yeah, just not like not a win overnight. But yeah, I know that's a bit sort of round the houses, but that's all I mean. We just keep going as we are. Let's not get sucked into scams, and let's try to do right by people. And then I think we talked about someone mentioned a consortium. I think stuff like that is a good idea. Approaching, I think it was you, Stefan, approaching various vendors, various people that can help us actually get this stuff over the line, get decentralized commerce over the line, get our stable coins over the line in a real world way, even if it's in a small way. Let the powers that be see that we can actually do something real, that we're not just playing in this sort of like what they feel is some like, scammy crypto bubble. We know it's not that, but we got to think about how they look at it. So yeah, a lot of work and backwards and forwards, but we are all taking the steps forward. I believe that.
Yeah. I love the answer. Before we hand it off to Sid for his answer, I think what's super interesting is you said we only went 5 minutes backwards, and that's such a purist, optimistic builder mindset, and I love that because we need to maintain that enthusiasm about the technology. I will say this: trust took a massive hit for our industry from what happened. That's like an undeniable, real effect that we've all felt. So I just want to jump in there because I love the optimism. We have to have that. Now, Sid, ball's in your court now, kind of the answer to what is regulation, what is the role of regulation tied to stablecoins?
Yeah, I think I'll say two things here. One is kind of like a personal experience from dealing with regulations and being a builder. So one of the products we built out in 2019, which was the commodities trade platform, we actually had an integration done with Western Union in Singapore. We did have an on-chain stablecoin back then, which was essentially issuing a single dollar on the chain against a single dollar in a fiat deposit in a bank account. And we were able to produce on-chain proof of reserves at all times in 2020, where every user of the platform was able to verify if that dollar exists in the fiat account real time. The issue there was, as soon as we went live with this in 2020 is when Singapore introduces the new law called Payment Services Act, which created a licensing requirement to run this. And that kind of got in the way of us actually rolling this out in production. So this is like, as a builder, Dove rightly pointed out, when you're sitting outside of the US trying to understand how US regulations affect you, it's a huge gray area as a builder. You're kind of navigating
It's not better inside.
a whole realm that it just doesn't make sense to you on the outside. I can't imagine how hard it is on the inside. So that's one aspect of it. And I think the second aspect that I wanted to point out to, which I think I mentioned on the podcast with you as well, Carter, earlier on, is that I feel going forward, there's also going to be a concept of user enforced regulations, where, just a quick example, if today all the centralized exchanges start publishing proof of reserves, the ones that don't, users would automatically gravitate away from those towards the ones that do publish, on-chain proof of reserves. So similarly, I think as users kind of become more aware of what they're dealing with when it comes to stablecoins, they will start to move towards the ones that they believe are safe, which in some ways kind of like a user enforced regulation, where users are banning themselves from using not safe mechanisms or not safe products and gravitating towards safer products. So I think that is also going to be a strong force to be reckoned with, or to be considered going forward, because each FTX collapse or each Luna collapse we go through is also education. More and more people, of course, burn their hands in the process, but learn a lot more coming out of it at the other end. So I think going forward, as long as there's enough information that's available, as long as users are kind of able to choose the right path, make educated choices moving forward, it will kind of lead to a natural grouping of usership towards safer practices and safer stablecoins, where it kind of becomes a de facto regulation from the users themselves.
And one thing we can collectively do as a group is, like, not only is there the user education, but there's also the regulatory education, and we can all collectively, as stablecoin projects, team up. And as the time comes, we can all lean on each other as resources to try to tell the story of, like, this is genuine progress, So that being said, final 10 minutes here. Want to pivot to a question that's near and dear to my heart, and it's tied to the risks of centralized collateral in 2023. Like, we have this ethos of decentralization, but then we also have this ethos of, like, stability that needs to be maintained. So we'll kind of go Christian, Dean, Tadao, and if we can fit in Stefan and Sam to kind of round things out, that'd be awesome. We'll see how fast we can go here. But, like, what do we, like, the risks of centralized collateral? How do we deal with that as decentralized projects? Where's the demarcation? And Christian, if you want to kick us off.
I think Zaki put it the best, which is the whole idea of plurality. Everybody's going to have a different appetite for centralization, and everyone's going to have a different perspective on how to utilize centralization for their project. And I mean, look, there's 7 of us here right now with all separate projects. There's plenty of room for different levels of centralization. Certainly from the perspective of Silk, we pretty much go with no centralization. Like, that's the ethos. The whole product is entirely based on decentralization, and that's just what the product is. And that's an interesting problem that we've kind of put in front of ourselves, because centralized assets are pretty good. USDC is the best stablecoin, and if you wanted to create uncorrelated assets, you have to pull from a place that's uncorrelated. And what's uncorrelated? It's centralized. It's off-chain. It's all regulated assets. It's real estate. It's commodities. You have to accept some amount of centralization, at least right now, if you want to be more flexible, essentially. So I personally actually don't mind centralization that much. I mean, I'm subject to the laws of the country that I live in anyway, so it's not that different that the money that I use is also subject to those laws. But Like I said, I think it's the best answer is to leave it up to the users and let people congregate on the projects that fit their ethos, and there's plenty of room for all of us.
Awesome. Dean, what do you think?
So this is a little bit tied to the regulatory question, right? That you sort of have this spectrum, and one of the key things that people need to understand is there's sort of, the account backed, what you've been referring as sort of centralized, the sort of asset backed, computed one like MakerDAO is the usual on us, several of the people here, and the algorithmic on the other end. And we've seen bad algorithmic like UST, but there are good algorithmic in the future, and we need people to understand that what we actually want is economically sound. Centralization, people bandy it about when they want to kind of, it's like calling, it's like in every Harry Potter, everything bad was dark magic, right? It's if you have enough independent assets that are all, quote, centralized, you are decentralized, right? Every validator in a proof of stake chain is centralized. It's located somewhere. But if I've got enough of them with enough different disparate interactions, I can build something decentralized on top of that. And so what you need is a broad collection of possibly off-chain, possibly on-chain, possibly bank accounts in one currency versus another, possibly real estate, et cetera, that are independently regulated in different jurisdictions, right? That gets you back to a world where you're decentralized as a stablecoin because you are combining all these sources of value that you can build your stablecoin on with appropriate risk management around them, right? So you don't take a deep dependency beyond what a particular facility might provide. So, same with bridge risk. There's a lot of people that are really concerned about bridge risks because there's been a lot of bad bridges. But when you have the newer generation that are a blockchain acting as a bridge, then you have substantially reduced bridge risk, but bridge risk is just counterparty risk. So, an asset over Axelar is a different risk than an asset over Gravity. They both have this additional risk, but, is it really that much more than the smart contract risk of the contract on the other side? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. If it is, you lower the minting limit, you make sure that you've got coverage for that risk and so forth. But as we move to a richer economy, because frankly, right now, the blockchain economy is still quite simple from the point of view of an economy. But as we move to a world with deep perp markets, deep perpetual markets, now you can start to do things that are real innovation, that you cannot do in the modern market that's not on a blockchain, like delta neutral stable coins, where you would not want to have your entire stable coin relying on that particular asset, but you'd like to be able to incorporate that mechanism, which is truly novel and truly an advance over anything that can be done in the off-chain world. And now we start moving into a world where on-chain stablecoins are less collateralized and yet still low risk because you've been able to assign the risk, separate the risk, have it be people that understand what they're doing and can manage their expectations. Similarly, when you add in slashing, the equivalent of slashing insurance, or I can put in, bridge risk, eventually you'll have a market where people can have insurance against bridge risk, and then it's a non-issue. You'll have liquidation insurance, which lets me now, instead of being even 120% over collateralized, I can be 100% over collateralized, and I'm paying a fee for someone else to cover the risk that my asset falls. All those kinds of things require the richer environment and cross-chain economy that we've all been building towards, but that'll evolve over time. And so one of the things you need in this world is regulation, if we're going to have it, which we are, that is permissive of mechanisms, and it's about what we want to accomplish, not how we're supposed to, so we can evolve going forward. And then having it be centralized assets is fine, right? That's just, it's got a place in the role of the overall on-chain stablecoin ecosystem.
Awesome. I love, there was a lot of nuance in that answer. Tadao, do you have anything you'd like to add on the risks of centralized collateral?
Yeah, so Dean was talking a lot about the diversification need. I think the other side is the transparency need. So I think one of the biggest problems we've seen with I think FTX being the biggest example, what we can see with 3xZ and then all the other examples, just lack of transparency. where you have this, I think, fake trust that a auditor that has been selected by themselves will actually be to your benefit. So let's say in a perfect world you have full transparency of the centralized entities, then you reduce the risk, I think, massively. I think that whenever we've seen problems on chain, let's say bad debt happening at Aave not that long ago, it's fine because everyone can see it. Luna, for all its problems, it does have the merit that we could all see what was happening at all times. So if we're able to achieve that, we're able to achieve bringing real assets on chain that are actually properly verified, then you stop having. I think you stop inheriting a lot of the issues that we usually just all packed together as like centralization problem. I think we get there, we'll be in a pretty good place.
It's interesting. Essentially, the centralization. If you have enough decentralized options for centralized things, it becomes decentralized. Love that answer from Dean. And then Tadao, you're pointing out transparency as being, extremely valuable component. Even if there is centralization, at least we have this on-chain visibility that strengthens these systems. Stefan, I'd love for you to jump in here for any of your perspective on regulation, and then we can close out with Sam, because I think also the centralized collateral question. I know with Frax that's come up many times before with X percentage of Frax is backed by USDC and how you've thought about those. But
yeah,
we'll
I mean,
Stefan,
I think.
Did we? I think we lost Stefan. Oh boy! All right. Well, we lost Stefan. Now he's back. Maybe. All right. We'll wait for Stefan to come up. Fisco, if you want to pull him off stage, we can wait for him to come back. Sam, what are your thoughts on centralization of collateral? This kind of the trade off and the criticisms that can be tied to it as a useful tool.
I think Dean had a great point in terms of, validators are real world assets, right? Whether they're, servers or they're, proof of work Bitcoin miners or whatever, right? And so it's not like blockchains themselves don't have real world assets of sorts. It's just who owns them, right? Is it one corporation that owns them? Is it a diverse global, set of people? Same thing with Frax in terms of, or stable coins in general, Frax does have a lot of exposure to USDC. It also does have DAI exposure too. Transitively, we have protocol controlled liquidity in some of the largest curve pools, like 3CRV, and including our Frax VP. And one of the things we try to do is actually the same thing in the spirit of what Dean was saying, is that, we try to not own all of these stable coins in like a single smart contract address that if, push comes to shove, it's very easy for like one or two, fiat coin actors to blacklist and then, figure it out later in court or something like that. Basically what's going on in like bankruptcy court, right? Which takes like years and years with all these lending and FTX and all these things. So in order for Frax to, kind of get wrecked, so to speak, right, in terms of some of its stablecoin collateral, they would have to blacklist hundreds and hundreds of, I don't know, maybe a couple thousand, perhaps, stakers of like Curve's 3CRV pool, Frax VP pool, users of Convex's staking boosters, and all these things, because all of those would freeze, right? Because you can't call the transfer function on, USDC or Tether or whatever to actually make any kind of swap. So we do try to have that kind of ethos. So like I really did vibe with what Dean said.
Awesome. Stefan, do you have any closing thoughts now that you're back with us? Any closing thoughts on regulation or centralization of collateral?
Yeah, no, I think what Dean said and what Tradio said were really interesting comments, right? I mean, I think the industry is regulated. And let's remember why we set up decentralized solutions was to build a new system that's ready for a modern environment, right? The old systems, the old regulations are not ready for these new systems that we're building, and were built out more than over 100 years ago. So what are the new regulations that need to be put in place, and how can the communities start governing, those regulations, and how do we put those in place? Transparency is really going to help us create more insight into what we're doing and how we're operating these businesses. But already in crypto, we already are more transparent than any of the banks. We are 100% collateralized, or 98% collateralized, or 90% collateralized compared to the fractional reserves that the traditional finance and the regulated finance is operating under. The entities that went down are regulated, centralized entities. They're just not regulated by the US because nobody knows what the decision is in the US. So it's all ad hoc and totally arbitrary in terms of how regulations are governed and managed out here in our environment. So much so that developers are leaving the US. They're going to Bahamas, they're going to Cayman, they're going to Lisbon, they're going to Dubai, everywhere else, because it's just too difficult to navigate in this environment. So, I mean, that's ultimately all I'm saying is we continue to build in a decentralized world. We need to create the trust of the community. And our moat is not a compliance moat. Our moat is the appreciation that the community has in the product that we build. That's what we're out here to do. And if they require more transparency, then we are transparent, right? Look how competitive we are. I mean, we're all against each other. We're holding each other accountable. We're going to hold each other accountable as an industry. Then the community will then try and also hold us accountable. I mean, they'll dig up all this stuff. They find out what we're doing. They know where we tweet. They know where we sit, where we act. And that all is my view, how we should be operating. And if we never take custody of the customer's funds, then I think we are operating in a much more jurisdictionally friendly environment.
Well, I think that's a strong way to close it. In summary, the future of stablecoins is bright, and we should never lose track of the fact that these systems do create genuine value, and it's our role to evangelize and spread it as such, and to also hold each other accountable throughout that process. So overall, really awesome panel, guys. I was nervous about having this many people on one call, but I think we really dug in. We didn't go a mile wide, inch deep. I think we actually got to dig in here a little bit. Thank you all for your insights. I would love to invite you back to the next Stablecoin Summit. In person is the hope. So just know that invitation is here, and we can do even deeper stuff and more nuanced panels. But with that being said, thank you for your time. And it was a lovely panel, guys.
I think I can speak for everyone to say thank you, Carter, for hosting this. You did a fabulous job.
Yeah, well, shout out to Fisco, our business development guy. He pulled everyone together. He's the silent hero as we speak, moving everyone around and putting on music and stuff. So huge shout out to him.
Yeah, lovely team. You guys at Shade are amazing. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks,
and all the speakers,
everyone.
guys. Ciao. Bye.
With that being said, we'll be now taking a quick, I need like a 60-second break to 90-second break. Grab some water. We'll be back with the infrastructure panel. Don't go anywhere. Be sure to like and subscribe. Be sure to retweet all those Welcome back, everyone. Just quickly snagged lunch real quick. Now we're good to go. We're all powered up for this infrastructure panel, which infrastructure is, of course, what powers all of Web3. There's the pun. But yeah, super pumped to have this infrastructure panel really talk about kind of the stuff behind the scenes that is going to drive stablecoin adoption and DeFi adoption as well. So without further ado, if we can pull up our panelists, super looking forward to this one. Nice. So we don't have I'm not managing 8 people on this call. It's 4, so we can take a deep breath, slow down a little bit. We can have a little more nuance here. So if each one of you would just want to do 60-second, 2-minute intro. Who are you? What's your protocol? What's it doing for the Cosmos on the infrastructure DeFi side? Or what's your role in infrastructure in the Cosmos? Then yeah, that'd be perfect.
Great. Well, I guess I'll go first. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, excellent. Well, hello, everybody. I'm really happy to be here. This has been a long summit so far, a few hours. I guess we're coming to the end now. I've been watching here and there. It's been very informative. So thanks for putting this together. My name is John. I do business development for Stride. Obviously, we're a Cosmos-wide liquid staking protocol. And the reason we're involved in this whole conversation about stablecoins is that shortly, I think many of the stablecoins in the Cosmos, we've been hearing about lots of them. Many of them are actually going to be backed in part or, well, probably in part, probably none of them entirely, by Stride's ST tokens. So yeah, our liquid stake derivatives. And I'm sure we'll talk a lot more about that later.
100%. Mohammed, how about you?
Sure. So Mohammed here, guys. I am the founder of Secure Software, one of the core devs at Shade Protocol and lead of infrastructure there. So excited to talk about all things infrastructure really here. Things how other protocols deal with it, like talk about layer 1, layer 2 infrastructure. There's so many things to dive into infrastructure in essence. And so many topics to talk about. So obviously excited about all of that stuff with all the people on board today.
Awesome. Jake.
Cool. So my name is Jake. I help manage the Cosmos ecosystem over here at Axelar, and as well as some of our kind of developer initiatives. Right now, I think most folks probably know of Axelar as through Satellite, which is a bridge that is built on Axelar to bring stablecoins into the Cosmos ecosystem. Right now, we are connected to, I believe, 30 chains, most of them EVM-based, but we'll also be adding a lot of non-EVM-based chains next year and moving towards a kind of permissionless onboarding model. And then also, next year, I think we're going to be able to start sending messages to and from Cosmos chains to other ecosystems. So similar to how we're able to send messages through IBC right now. And John and Stride, I think you guys have a really awesome use case for that. And I've highlighted kind of how fast that lets an application and a chain scale within the Cosmos. We'll be enabling all of that functionality from IBC-enabled chains to all the other chains within our network. So excited to talk about how that can play into all of the fun infrastructure topics today.
Yeah. So first off, great introduction, guys. I kind of want to kick us off with, a lot of decentralized finance in Cosmos. The user experience is intimately tied with the infrastructure, right? Like the API is like I load a web page, how fast does something load? I want to move an asset, I have to use, a bridge. I'm holding I'm holding assets. Which wallet am I going to choose? So for you guys, what are the weak points right now in infrastructure in the Cosmos, and why do you think that is, and how can we kind of improve on that front, if that makes sense as a question?
Yeah, I guess I'll go first. Or one thing I think, obviously it's fantastic that we're here in the Cosmos. Instead of having a monolithic blockchain, we have many blockchains, many app chains. But then the problem is getting from one to another. IBC works very well, but for new users especially, it can be difficult to jump from Osmosis to Stride to Terra, moving all around. even providing liquidity can be difficult for new people. Obviously, there are a lot of AMMs in the Cosmos. One thing that Stride is doing to improve that, if you've used our protocol, you probably see how slick it is. We try to get it down to as few clicks as possible. In the new year, as our developers continue to work on the protocol, we're going to try and reduce the clicks even further, just to make it more simpler. Maybe have an automated feature for providing liquidity on osmosis. So yeah, things like that, just ease of use things to reduce friction.
Awesome. Mohammed, how about on your end when you think about infrastructure, weak points, what can be improved in the Cosmos?
Actually, like blockchain in general is still a little bit early. And when we talk about infrastructure, we compare it to the world of Web 2.0, right? And when we compare it to that, I think we have ways to go in comparison. When I talk about infrastructure, I look at Visa and MasterCard. They produce like, millions of transactions per second, right? Like, and their API is able to like hold and sustain those type of transactions. When I talk about scale, I'm like, that is what we need to really get to, or better than that, actually, to really sustain the Web3 economy. Obviously, Cosmos Ethos also touches base on some of this aspect where we are like, we don't need to vertically scale everything when we can horizontally scale some of the infrastructure, right? In particular, the app chain thesis, which I guess everybody here is a believer of in some capacity at least, is really something that's really touched on the infrastructure aspect of things, where we are trying to reduce the multi-use case and like increase the horizontal scalability we can achieve with that. So there's a lot to talk about in like scalability, even the horizontal space. There's a lot of like stacks that are like talking about how we can scale horizontally and vertically at the same time at capacity. How do we bring like that throughput? How do we bring that access to services? How do we bring access to the application user that really blockchain interacts with, which attunes to your user experience score that you were talking about, which is all critical to infrastructure. And some of the loose points that we have to really fix as we go, all in the Cosmos and the wider blockchain space as well.
Yeah, it's a good summary. Jake, I'm curious from your perspective, obviously as a bridge, you guys are the ability to move assets around is such a like fundamental crypto concept. So from a bridge provider's perspective, what components do you see missing in Cosmos? Because obviously you're bringing the bridge to the table, but what are the weak points that you see that need to be improved on the infrastructure side?
Yeah, I think like what I'm most excited about is just some of the UI updates that we're going to be able to do, right? Like, for example, I think Kato and Squid are two like good enhancements that we can talk about, right? And just like right, when we think about bridging assets, that's one thing where you're kind of just doing like a mint and burn model. But when we think about onboarding into Cosmos chains from, say ETH on Ethereum, and you want to get into, IST, being able to do that in one click, where you're able to abstract all of the bridging, liquidity pools, swapping, like dexes, like if you think about how complicated a lot of the paths that users take are, it is really not like the most welcoming place to do DeFi. I mean, DeFi in general is it's confusing, right? And just like figuring all of that out, it's YouTube videos, it's blogs, it's kind of just a pain in the butt. So being able to abstract like all of that confusion away from the users and make these really seamless one-click onboarding experiences, I think is going to be incredibly powerful. I think Osmosis has done a great job so far of like starting to highlight some of that. And I think within the next couple of months, we'll start to see a lot more traction with, things like Squid, where you're able to, just trust that is, picking a right path for you, and then sending these like multi-hop contract calls to go and execute functions on different chains. And then we also have like features that are coming out where it's actually called like a GMP Express feature, where we have a service that is going to essentially allow these transactions to finalize within like 30 seconds. And then they're going to actually finish the transaction on the back end, take a small fee for the risk that they're taking, but if something gets stuck during that transaction, it's now the service's job to go and like actually finish that out. So I'm really excited about that. And I think this year we'll also see just like, I think a lot of the Ethereum users don't really realize that like when you come over into the Cosmos, you're like actually going from blockchain to blockchain, right? So just ironing out some of the path dependency problems. With the Strangelove team, I know has built some software to do that, and we're working through some of those things so that you can kind of like send the tokens back to their source chain before going somewhere else. But again, just like using this general message passing functionality to kind of bake in some of these features so that like if you're transferring an asset from Osmosis to Secret, right, it's gonna do the right thing without the user really needing to worry about asset fragmentation and things getting stuck. So I think that by the end of the year the space is going to look very different just in terms of like one-click experiences. It's going to be a lot more friendly for people to come into the Cosmos ecosystem and start playing around.
Yeah, my prediction is that 2023 composability and interoperability reaches like a tipping point where like could we have it where a user goes to an app in Cosmos from Ethereum and they don't even know they really left Ethereum, right? Like that would be like the dream end state is users shouldn't have to really know in terms of the flow of it. So shifting away from like the UI UX improvements that we're all, I think, super excited about, simplification to like one click user stories on whatever apps we're talking about. That's obviously there's infrastructure built in to, improve that and make that a reality. That being said, one of the biggest criticisms I think of like on Ethereum has been like Infura, like centralized APIs. It's like, are we a decentralized ecosystem if all the front ends have the same API provider? Same with like front ends that aren't open source, right? Like the risks tied to certain pieces of infrastructure remaining like opaque. So in your guys' opinion, what does it mean to have decentralized infrastructure in the Cosmos? And like, what are the trade-offs of like kind of being a decentralized infrastructure maximalist? And I want to acknowledge that a blockchain is a form of decentralized infrastructure, but there's components built on top of it that really aren't.
I could go ahead first on that as well here. So talking about the decentralized infrastructure in the Cosmos space is different than talking about it in Ethereum, right? Like in Ethereum, when we talk about the network itself, we talk about thousands of nodes that are like computing to bring consensus, while in Cosmos, it's actually just like 120 to 150, depending on which chain you go to, really, right? Obviously, there has to be a lot of decentralization talk on that front. But when you talk about like API nodes and access to services, there does form a level of centralization, let's call it, because there are teams and services providing it to the dApps, right? So it's a matter of access to blockchain that is like not decentralized in this context, really. So how do we change that in Cosmos? Actually, it's far more easier than to do it in like Ethereum, for example, right? We could like build out systems that are like easily spinning up side nodes or side nodes for individual users or light clients, right? Those are things that could contribute towards the access of decentralized access to like blockchain networks. The ability to like spin up fast chains in Cosmos also helps in this aspect, as long as we have the tooling in place. We have seen a lot of centralization in the Cosmos space. We have public points which are not that great, and we have private endpoints that are controlled by like some entities, like central entities that are giving access to applications, and they obviously have faster access to the network on chain, where transactions can be pushed to the memory, right, on chain memory. So there is that level of access technology, that tooling, that on Cosmos is far better because of the way the Cosmos works. But the point being that the access to decentralization, I think there's always going to be that point of failure because someone has to build technologies to access this. The only way we can compete with this is having enough people bring the same service to the table, right? That's the one way we can reduce like decentralization, increase decentralization in this context. So yeah, that's my only 2 cents I would like to add on that front. I would like to hear what Jake and John have on this take as well.
Yeah, I think like for me, we kind of have a good example of this from probably a month or two ago, where we had some LPs that were funding some pools on Curve, and we were using a lot of people were using those pools, and then I think it was I guess the last disaster was probably FTX. So it was right around that they just like overnight pulled their funds. Everybody started freaking out. And we have since moved to a mod. Like that was a classic example of centralization, right? Like everybody was getting mad at us, like, where are the pools? At the same time, we were like, where are our pools? So we've since, like, obviously we don't want that happening moving forward. So we've moved to a more different model where we're like setting up pools on different chains so that the pools can manage themselves. I definitely like recently have gotten like more on board with the whole decentralized decentralized compute and decentralized storage, and I think that some of it is still like I just kind of find it interesting, like, why do we need to be saving things forever? But in general, right, like if you're going to have a decentralized application, I do think that it makes a lot of sense to have all of the resources that the application is using to run to also be in a decentralized manner, because it's kind of like you're defined by the least of your peers type thing, or like, it's the weakest link, but they're all just points of failure. So I think that the more decentralized we get, like traditionally we can see that decentralization leads to security, right? And that's why Axelar is built as a blockchain, because we get our security from a permissionless decentralized set of validators, just like the blockchains that we connect are. And that's why we chose, our home to be Cosmos. And I think in a similar respect, right, just like the more that we can minimize the centralized points, it's just going to make everybody's stack that much more robust. And that robustness also leads to security. And, essentially we're spinning up these systems that are like designed to run themselves. So we don't want these centralized points of failure anywhere. And there's a bunch of fallback mechanisms. And I think all of that just leads to liveliness. And I definitely think, and transparency, right? So I think that some of those are going to be a slower burn. Like the validation is like definitely the number one thing that you need to like make a trustless system. But I think that there's definitely going to be a movement over towards more of those products and services. And I think we have Jackal, we have Kive, we have, I don't know, I feel I'm missing a couple, but like, I feel like within Cosmos, we have most of the services that an application needs to run, like already in a decentralized manner. They're just kind of picking up traction right now.
I think I might have to pass on this one. A little bit out of my depth. I was more so looking to talk about liquid staking, but maybe I can contribute to the next question.
Yeah, 100%. So we'll have the next question be more relevant in that direction. How do we, ease the adoption from TradFi users into DeFi? You can go at this from an infrastructure standpoint. You can go at this from like a product design standpoint. I know staking derivatives are a really interesting one, and maybe that's where we start, John. Is like, what does that process look like of like onboarding people into the concept of derivatives, and what it's look like to put infrastructure in place to make that transition as easy as possible?
Yeah. So onboarding people from TradFi, I guess. I don't know, because DeFi is so different. I'll have to think about that one. How about you two answer?
Onboarding people onto the Cosmos is definitely challenging because there's multiple endpoints that we had to come through, right? Like there is Kepler, for example, right? We don't have MetaMask integration yet. In many of the chains, probably EVMOS is the exception here, really, that has integration, and users are in tuned, at least blockchain users are in tune to MetaMask because of Ethereum being the longest term access to like DeFi slash, blockchain services on a layer 2 system. So people use those services, and there is like different type of services available in Cosmos. So there's like onboarding time for that we have to think about. So the Kepler integration, the other wallets that are available in the Cosmos ecosystem, since we are like so horizontally scalable, everybody has their own type of different solution. There's not necessarily, there is a standard, not a thorough standard that's followed by everybody that does add an onboarding time. So I guess there's like one pain point that has to be solved in that context. And then the other context that you're talking about in terms of let's take it in staking derivatives as well, right? Like we have to make sure that staking derivatives are created for chains in the Cosmos. At this point in time, we deal with like Secret Network, for example, right? We have the staking derivative for Secret. That is basically saying that people have to understand what Secret is to understand the derivative of a Secret, really, right? To use the derivative of Secret, they need to understand what is staking on Secret. But like if people don't have this understanding, it comes to a point where we need to onboard them first. And there's like that friction to onboard new users that always exists, in my opinion. Like there has to be some ramp or understanding. But we do it through educational content, right? Hey, let's educate people on what layer ones are, what Secret Network is, why privacy is important. And then once they understand all of this, like they get onboarded, and that's when they think about, oh no, we can just do staking derivatives instead. That's far easier to like stake on the network, earn yield, etc. as well, right? So there are multiple pain points to onboarding in essence. There are a lot of solutions that can be thought of in this context, but I still lean towards the education and the building of DeFi, because staking derivatives and access to staking derivatives will only exist if people understand the underlying technologies on those funds. At least that's my take on the question you asked earlier.
Yeah, Jake, do you have any thoughts on the onboarding question?
Is this like a general onboarding question into Cosmos, or onboarding?
Yeah, just like what does it mean to onboard folks that aren't Cosmos native, whether they be institutions or retail? Like what infrastructure needs to be put in place to do that? And my mind was more going towards like the payment rails, right? Like the Cato monies of the world, the bridges of the world, the wallets of the world. But it also is relevant to like any sort of app, like a staking derivative or a DEX. Like how do you onboard those users for the first time? So, but yeah, it's a very general question.
Yeah, so I do think like all of those are pretty easy. I still think that most of the people are gonna get into MetaMask first, and then like here like Cosmos is getting more play on Bankless and stuff, and we need to get them to download a wallet. I think that wallets, Cypher, Leap, like there's a lot of really good wallets with more functionality that are coming off that also span across EVMs, and I think that the wallets are do a great job of onboarding. And then, again, just making it really as easy as possible to get your money here, right? Like fiat on ramps, like without needing to use a bridge, or like all of these things are kind of like just to get your money into Cosmos right now is kind of like a level 2 understanding of like what's happening in the crypto space. I actually think that like what we're going to start seeing, I'm a little bit surprised that we haven't started seeing any of this yet, but like there's so much on-chain data that we have, right? Like if you think about two derivatives platforms trying to like steal each other's customers, like I think that we're going to get into a world where you can see who's using other protocols, and we can start figuring out like what the acquisition cost is to get some of those folks over to like, like here's $100 to come and start trading on my platform. The data is going to be there on chain. And then for the first time, we're actually going to be able to start sending messages. Like the messages that Axelar sends can be executing functions on different chains, right? Like that's complex, but like it could also be like, what's up, homie? So we can start like using this data to start messaging promotional stuff to other to other like retail users, whatever, that are on different chains and say like, hey, download a Kepler wallet, come over here, try this out. We'll give you $100 free to trade if you stay there for 30 days or whatever. And I think that like it's going to get like pretty scrappy and a lot more like traditional marketing, right? Like where we're starting to actually like be very calculated about what we do and how much it costs to like get a customer and how much that customer is worth to us. And like real business. So I hope that we start seeing that a little bit more, just because I think that if we like, once people can come over here, like there's a really good chance that we're going to be able to keep them within the Cosmos ecosystem because there's so many good builders. So, I mean, I guess I'll be able to push that agenda for myself a little bit, but I do hope that we see some more of that next year.
100%. That's interesting concept of like, of course we got to get people into the wallet, but also we have to give people a reason to leave what they're currently using, and the data is there to be able to do it. So when are people going to start actually leveraging that? I think it's a really interesting point. John, we'll circle back to you. So what is the role of the staking derivative in the Cosmos, and how does staking derivatives improve like security and decentralization of that infrastructure?
Yeah, that was one of the main things I was mostly interested in talking about, especially with regard to stablecoins. My big thing, the big pitch for liquid staking derivatives and stablecoins is obviously the hurdle rate for using unstaked assets to back stablecoins is way too high. And by that, I mean, if you're going to have a 200% collateralization ratio and you're using Atom to back a stablecoin, you're going to be losing 40% per year. And so you wouldn't do that operation. You wouldn't have that stable coin at all unless you thought you could earn more than 40% per year through whatever strategy you're running to clear the hurdle rate. And that's a pretty tall ask, especially in a bear market. And that's the problem that liquid staking solves. The stable coin problem anyway that liquid staking solves, because when you have an LSD, you get to keep your staking rewards. You can use that derivative as collateral, so it could be 200% collateralization, 300%, or 1,000%, like Sam was talking about in the last panel, and you wouldn't lose any staking rewards, except for, to be honest, except for the small fee that Stride does collect. And yeah, that's the big thing. The big like fundamental piece of infrastructure that Stride provides to collateralized debt position backed stablecoins in the Cosmos. And it's really crucial, because if you want to have your stablecoin in the Cosmos backed by endogenous Cosmos native collateral, using an LSD is really the only economically feasible way of doing that.
Yeah, and I think that's really interesting. The infrastructure that's being provided is going to empower users not to have to face the opportunity costs. It's like you can have the best of both worlds if you assume that the infrastructure of Stride is safe and that the code is also safe. So super looking forward to derivatives permeating throughout all of the Cosmos. I know Shade Protocol with Shade Swap, we're going to be highlighting the derivatives. With Silk as well, we'll be highlighting the derivative. And I guess one final question before we close with Jake and Mohammed. How does staking derivatives improve like the validator sets? I'm curious, like what Stride does to help improve decentralization, or like how does it delegate out to improve the infrastructure?
Was that question for me then?
Yes, correct. Yep.
Yeah, for sure. People do it in different ways. There's about a dozen liquid staking providers in the Cosmos right now. It's quite a lot of smaller ones that many people maybe aren't aware of. They all do different ways of selecting their host chain validators. So you'll deposit assets with the liquid staking provider, then they have to stake assets, because that's the whole point. And the way they pick the validators on the host chains to stake those assets to, the way they determine that, can do a lot to help the centralization, or a lot to harm the decentralization of the host chains, or to help it. So for instance, what Stride does, Stride has a way of distributing our stake across the entire active validator set of our host chains. We're currently undergoing that process with the Cosmos Hub. So we do that. We distribute it across the entire validator set, but also we have a way of selecting validators such that we are rewarding validators who do contribute to the network. So through this process where Stride delegates our deposited atom, we help the decentralization and we help the overall health by rewarding validators that contribute to the ecosystem. So that's something that Stride does.
Yeah, I think derivatives are really uniquely positioned to improve, like serve as a public good that improves the quality of the validator sets, which is the infrastructure that all of Cosmos is built on top of, is that decentralization of validators. So super looking forward to that. Mohammed and Jake, I guess for you guys, what are you guys most looking forward to in 2023? Whether it be DeFi, infrastructure, Cosmos, like what's your predict? We'll do this forever. I guess in the end, we got message. We actually have 5 minutes left, so we'll kind of close here. What are your predictions for 2023, and what are you most looking forward to? Mohammed, if you want to kick us off.
I can start, sure. 2023, I know I've shared this internally a lot as well, is that really get access to some of our Cosmos technology to traditional finance in particular, right? With access to Silk coming out soon, it's really a matter of getting it hooked into regular commerce, like you said. And I think Stefan from like the previous panel also mentioned that we have the ability to like get stablecoins out there. For example, is using the POS systems that are already established, right? Really pushing for those type of integrations is really what the beauty of stablecoins in a sense in particular would come out, really, right? But that also is not just stablecoin. It's because you have access to all these layer ones in the Cosmos that would be happening maybe behind the scenes. Maybe the user is not doing it directly. It could be different types of applications and implementations that could come in place to really make this efficient. But this type of access to TradFi is really what I'm looking forward to in the near future with blockchain, because that is where we need to build out the infrastructure, the tooling, the services that would build these services for really people to come in and with easy, maybe they won't even know that they're like interacting with a blockchain in the background, because that is what we really aim to be.
Jake, what's your take on 2023?
I mean, I'm definitely hoping for less chaos. I think that people are, from a Cosmos perspective, I think that we're going to keep on seeing some other large protocols like, outside of DYDX keep on moving over, and we're just going to continue to gain momentum and get more hype. And I think like even with Polygon Supernets, Avalanche subnets, like we're starting to, and the layer 2s, right? Like we're just starting to see that like having your own blockchain makes a lot of sense. And so I'm excited for that. I think that also from like an institutional perspective, we've started seeing some, like Apple Pay just did something with USDC. Like we have Stripe coming into the market. So I think we're getting like validation from a lot of these larger players that like are kind of undeniable. I would put definitely Apple, like both of those guys in that category, right? So like just picking up mainstream market adoption in the places where like we know it can hit, which is, I think payments is some low hanging fruit. And then just like finding other ways to not trick people, but like similar to like the Trojan horse thing with like NFTs getting into Reddit, right? Like figuring out more creative ways to get people in the space. And I think a lot of that comes from a UI perspective, right? Like you just like bought an NFT, have like downloaded a wallet you didn't even realize, right? So like how do we further enable these experiences to like onboard people into the space, educate them about like, having a bank that's run through code and not with people. And then like you have higher yields. Like, why are you not, putting your finances here? And right now it's really because of trust, but the whole system is supposed to be built on trust. So, like getting like just putting in the slow and steady like work that needs to be done to like get some of the momentum back that we lost this year and build that trust back up.
Yeah, I agree with the overall sentiment. The only thing is desiring for less how do I say this? Entropy is always dangerous, because if there's one thing crypto seems to have, it's a lot of entropy. So we can hope for the best on that front. But at the end of 2021, if someone had asked me what was going to happen in 2022, there's no way I could have predicted like, oh yeah, second largest crypto exchange is going to crash, largest decentralized stable coin is going to go to zero. Like, it's just, you can't, you can never predict what's coming next. But to your point, you can keep slowly and steadily chipping away and improving, as this panel is about the general infrastructure that everything's built upon. So that being said, John, if you want to kind of close us out, what are you looking forward to in 2023 the most? What are some of your predictions? And then we'll call it a day on this panel.
Yeah, for me, I'd say I'm looking forward to DeFi taking market share from CEXs, centralized exchanges. I think that'll be a big trend, a big narrative in 2023. Obviously, FTX collapsed. People are losing confidence even in Binance. So I foresee a lot of DeFi, and especially in the Cosmos as well. In the Cosmos, there's such a great foundation, and there's so many green shoots of DeFi coming up just everywhere on so many different chains: Comdex, Secret, obviously Osmosis, Injective. Injective turned on IBC and added Cosm this year. So lots of very, very good sides. And I think Cosmos in particular is really primed right now for a huge DeFi boom. And I think it'll be really exciting to see Stride, but also other LSD providers providing excellent endogenous collateral for all this sophisticated DeFi.
Amazing. Well, thank you all for your time. I feel like we hit on, it was a very, very wide array of perspectives on infrastructure. And I know the community really appreciate you guys hopping on here today. So thank you for your time. That was an awesome panel.
So you guys, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
So that leaves me. I believe we're at the end of our, let me just check the agenda one last time here. I think I get to close this out here. We done? All right. I'll close this. I'll close this out. So first off, what a success. 10 plus different, partners represented here today. I think my biggest takeaways is like, what an amazing diversity of convicted builders. Like, I'm genuinely optimistic about the future of decentralized stablecoins. I'm very optimistic about the infrastructure that's going to be supporting these stablecoins. I'm optimistic about the plurality, as Zucky said, of Cosmos and what that's going to unlock for everyone. And I think 2023 is this really unique tipping point where all of these builders that have been building for sustainability are going to have their chance in the limelight. And I know Shade Protocol and Silk, our stablecoin, are going to be part of that process. So thank you all for your time. Before we close things out, be sure to follow Shade_Protocol on Twitter, and be sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel for more content. We do think there will be another Stablecoin Summit, and in my heart of hearts, I want it to be in person. So really pumped about the turnout we had today. Get involved in the community. And yes, thank you all for your time. Long live privacy, long live decentralization, and happy building.